my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our redeemer, and it is in his name, which is his authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Amen. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Ni hao, namaste, osaya, anakitawaya, Ohio. I see you. Manut, kamsamida, habaragani, Aquaba, Etesen, Jambo, Mimini Kofi, Nina Franco Kutana Nwewe, Bakwatav, Shabbat Shalom, Yashral, Ana Kofi, Mashalam Hey, Ana Kofi, Kohela, the Servants of Christ. How's everybody doing? I'm Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servants of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. How's everyone doing? Thank you for being on and joining us one more again, as we continue to get into the word and what Yah has for us. And as we continue to grow through this word today, we once again give all praise and honor to the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. We give all honor and praise to him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Thank you guys for joining us and those who support her in her endeavors to make sure that the diaspora remains healthy. And we appreciate you so very much. To the moderators, the ministerial staff, SOC, we appreciate you, moderators. I bow down to you. Thank you so much that you do to help us. To SOC, you guys know what you do all over the place, all over the world, behind the scenes. Ministerial staff, of course, we are very appreciative of all the things that you has helped us to put together and continue to help us to put together. Do not forget, on the website, by the way, there have been major updates. So we have information about class on there. Not 100% information yet, because I still do need to make sure that I put up the place that you can go online and sign up for the next classes that are going to start Monday on the last Monday of August the 28th. But we do have information about the 8 weeks worth of curriculum that are going to be in for each session, for each class. Oh, it's weird the way it looked. It looked like you were just holding the light. I didn't see the instance. Yeah. So but we thank you guys. So please feel free to go on there. The 7 F's have been updated on there. So you can look at the videos that go with the actual information. And we have had updated for a little while now what's going to be happening when we meet up in September 29th through October the 6th. And I will be making sure that we have some information, taken care of as far as, we'll have some meetings and some different things like that coming up and everything soon, but everything's pretty much taken care of on that end. Even if you missed the middle deadline, remember, we were looking for at least partial payment, or at least for you to give us some information by July 12th. August 12th is when we're looking for the full donation. If you need help, if you need us to know something, if you need us to know that something's coming or it's just not in yet, we do need to have that information by a certain date, or at least be aware of it. But we thank you, we appreciate you, and we honor you for your time. And thanks for being with us. All right, so let's get into today's message. And there'll be more updates, things to come. Don't forget to keep looking at WhatsApp for certain things to indicate what's going on. Don't forget Thursday Rising Prayer is coming up. Tomorrow will be my day off. However, Minister Tamara will be on YouTube giving us a word in the rising, and she'll be on the evening on her platform with TikTok. And also on Saturday coming up, we're asking that you guys remember that we'll have Shabbat Shalom service. We'll have Shabbat's Bit Sefer, Shabbat school for the children. And also there will be, we moved our SOC meeting to that date, and then the women's meeting will be at 7 p.m. on that Saturday. So please, ma'am, and please, sir, if you can hold yourself accountable to all those things. And then, of course, those events in between, those people in between that we support what they're doing, feel free to support them as well in the community. All right. So we thank you, we appreciate you, and we look forward to doing some great things as we continue to move forward. Now let's go ahead and get into today. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Carla, MIT Stephen, Minister Nice, Sister Joy. There we go. Romac. This is Deso Beats, if you're still on. Super, I don't know if it's Super Vening. Not sure if I'm saying that correctly. How you doing? How you doing, Sister Nadine, Iska, Big Brother Thomas, Darius, Rose, um, everybody. Sister Elion, how you doing? David, Sister Deja, Trey. Oh, we helped you. All right. Amen. Praise y'all. Praise y'all for the help that we're giving out, or that really is using us to give out. How you doing, Sister Deborah? Everybody on, if I miss your name, charge to my head and not to my heart. Those who are joining us on the podcast, later on Facebook, those on YouTube, those on TikTok, thank you for being on again. We appreciate you so very much. Hello, Money Green. Thank you so much. How you doing, Jay? Sister Judith, everybody, Miss Hibiscus, Cora, Ernest, thanks for being part of the community. Everybody, how are you doing? How are you doing? If I missed you, once again, I see looks like I don't even know what emoji it is. It's the happy face with hearts in the eyes and a microphone next to it, look, or a ring next to it. Okay, thanks for being part of the community. Appreciate it. How you doing, Lady Sunrise? Thanks for being part of the community. Arlene, everybody. If I miss your name once again, I think Michelle, I might have missed you. Lisa, Jonathan, thanks for being part of the community. All right, appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. So today I want to talk about something that's going to sound a little weird to us at first, but hopefully after a little bit of explanation, you'll be able to see what's going on, right? Today I want to talk about empathy for your enemy. That's going to sound weird. Empathy for your enemy. And I don't mean sympathy. I want to make that clear. I did not say sympathy for your enemy. How you doing, Sister Sage? What I said, and how you doing, Sister Betty? How you doing, D. Evans? And thank you for the love. Appreciate it. This is not sympathy, even though sympathy, you can have sympathy as well to a certain degree, but I'm focusing on empathy and empathy for your enemy, right? How you doing, Auntie Marion? Empathy for your enemy. How you doing, Brother TJ? Right? Empathy for your enemy. Yeah, right? We're not talking about necessarily having pity or sympathy where we're saying, oh, we just feel bad for you. Although those things can sometimes intertwine, empathy and sympathy, but that's not what I'm talking about and focusing on. What we're focusing on, and thank you for sharing the live, Arlene, and how you doing, PD, is empathy, not sympathy. Empathy for your enemy. Now, empathy, right? And matter of fact, let's do this real quick because we can go into all these places, and if we're not careful, we have people arguing about stuff that's not necessarily arguable, right? So let's do it like this. Hold on one second. We're going to look up the definition of empathy just to make sure that we have something that we can say this is our, you know, we can at least have a foundation. We'll even use a worldly foundation. We'll use an Oxford foundation since people believe that means that it's better for whatever reason. So let's use an Oxford definition, right? So Oxford definition, and this is why I don't even like it, but let's just go ahead and use the words they use because understand means something different than comprehend. And I'm not saying you should necessarily even understand your enemy. That means you stand under them or you're under their standard. How you doing, Sister Beverly? Right? So I'd rather you say comprehend, but nevertheless, let's just quote it the way it is before we start, getting into all these parceling and things of that nature. It is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Right? I'm going to quote it again and then I'll mess with it just a smidge, right? So we can actually have proper etymology. But the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. How you doing, Sister Toya? We would probably say it more like this: the ability to understand and share feelings. Instead of understand, we would say comprehend. The ability to comprehend, because to understand means that I'm under your standard. That's not what we're saying here. How you doing, Pinky? The ability to stand under is not what we're trying to say, but it is the ability to comprehend and share the feelings of another. That is empathy. How you doing, Minister Moselle? The ability to what? To comprehend and share the feelings of another. So basically, that's all we're talking about. When I say empathy, and how you doing, Sister Juanetta, how you doing, MIT Tracy? So when I say have empathy for your enemy, when I say have empathy for your enemy, what am I saying? I'm saying that you should have the ability right? The ability to do what? The ability to comprehend and therefore know what they're feeling. Or even sometimes some people would say it's empaths now. The new modern fad is to say that I feel, and I'm not even saying that's necessarily wrong. I'm just saying the new modern way of looking at it is to say I feel what they feel. Right. So I might not comprehend it or understand it or even like it or whatever the case might be, but I can still feel what they feel. But really, if I'm going to be empathetic, I have to comprehend and feel what they feel. Okay. Or at least be aware of what they feel. How you doing, Sister Latoya? Now, why is that important that we therefore have empathy with our enemy? Because if you don't comprehend what your enemy's doing, and if you don't recognize how they feel about you, we're going to have a problem. How you doing, Sister Renee? Did you catch that? If you don't comprehend, right, how your enemy thinks about you, if you don't comprehend your enemy, and if you don't recognize what they're doing based upon how they feel, you have a problem. We have a little something that we use here called culture to habits. And it goes like this: culture affects beliefs, beliefs affect emotions, emotions affect feelings, feelings affect your mood affects your effort or energy you're going to put into something, and the effort or energy you put into something ultimately affects your habits. Maybe say that again. Culture to habits. Your culture is going to affect your belief. Your belief is going to affect your emotion. Your emotion is going to affect your feelings. Your feelings shall affect the mood that you are in. The mood that you are in will ultimately determine how much effort or energy you're going to put into something. How much effort or energy you put into something affects your habits. Your habits are what's going to and well, let me say it one more again, right? And then we'll get into a little deeper, and then we'll go into what we're talking about today, which is having empathy for your enemy. I didn't say sympathy. I didn't say bow down. I said have empathy for your enemy, because you need. What does empathy mean again? Empathy means that not only do I comprehend what they're going through, but I also know how they feel, which means now that I know how to react, I know how to be proactive or preactive, right? In what they're in dealing with an enemy. How you doing, Brother Vincent? All right. If I didn't say so already. So once again, in culture affects my beliefs. My beliefs will affect my emotions. My emotions will cause me to have the feelings I have. The feelings that I have will start to get me in a mood. If I have those feelings long enough, I get into a mood. The mood that I am in will affect the effort or energy I have left to develop ultimately habits. And those habits that I form becomes either a new bastardized version of culture, or it will become the culture that I diligently kept in place from the beginning. Right? How you doing, Renaissance? It's first time seeing me inside. Praise God. Right? We inside, outside. Today we're inside. Um, I do prefer to be outside. Praise God. Um, but thank you for being on again. So and what are we talking about today? Empathy. So I need to comprehend even my empathy for my enemy. I need to comprehend what my enemy is going through, right? And what they make their decisions on, and even what's happening with their feelings. So what is my enemy's culture? That's extremely important. And we're so busy telling people that our enemy has no culture. How you doing, MIT Jelani? Right? That's what we do. The enemy has no culture. They have no. There might be many different cultures that are sewn together. There might be many different things that we missed. Right? There might be a lot of different things that we're going. But our enemy has a culture, just like you have a culture. The problem is that the enemy. Now you're trying to say the enemy has no culture. The way the enemy says you have no culture. Don't get caught up in that. Don't think like a conqueror. You are more than a conqueror. Culture first. Did I say hello, Sister Tori? I don't know if I did, but hello, how you doing? Culture first, right? Do you have empathy for your enemy? How you doing, DP? Do you have empathy for your enemy? Do you know how they feel? Do you know how they act? How you doing, Donovan? Do you have empathy for your enemy? I can't stand this person. You need to have empathy. What's the reason that they did what they did? Culture then informs my beliefs. Everything you believe is based off of a culture. Or you could even say a lack thereof or a changing of it. But everything you believe is based off of a culture. Mhm. Praise God. Yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is. Everything that you believe, everything that you stand for is culture. Everything that you were taught, culture. Everything that you aspired and were inspired to be or aspired to be is culture. It can help you squash beef, sure. Culture. It can help you to get past that. People that don't want to squash the beef, it can help you to forgive them, even if they won't forgive you, and keep it moving, right? But regardless of how we're looking at it, I want to accept. See, cultures first, then your beliefs come out of that. What you believe is because of your culture. Why are you? We don't even think about it. You keep talking about like not you. If the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, take it off, right? You hear a lot of people say, man, I can't stand these people sitting here and this and that or whatever. They don't even speak English. Man, I can't do this. Our people, our diaspora does this now. But they used to say that about you when they said you did not speak English that well. And then if you could speak English even better than they could, they say, oh, he speaks so well. She speaks so well. This is cultural. But it's English, by the way. It's Anglo-ish. It's English. It's like blue-ish, yellowish, reddish. It is not exactly what you think it is. Like when people speak Spanish, to see they don't not speak Spain. See, in French, if you go to France, they don't say they speak French or Frenchish. They say they speak the French, la français, right? Do you speak the French? Why do you speak the French? Why do you have to have the French name? They have that because this is exactly what it is. This is the culture. We're not bowing down to it. They don't like if you go to why do I always have issues with this place lately? Been there before. You got the jazz festival up there, Montreal. If you go up there, right, somebody from Paris, right, who speaks Le Français, is not trying to hear France or French over there. Right? Matter of fact, if you go visit certain spots in France, a lot of people will try to speak broken English to you and do a terrible job speaking English before they let you mess up French. I'm not even saying that's a great way of looking at things. I'm just telling you that's how straight and stubborn they are when it comes to their culture. How you doing, Ash the Siren? Right? When it comes to their culture, how you doing, Sister Monica? They're not playing with it. They're not playing games. How you doing, Keith? They're not trying to see if you can go ahead and get away with things. They're not trying to see about this, that, whatever. They're saying, hey, if you come here, you're going to speak the French, or we're not really going to speak. They don't have time to be like, oh, that was such a great job, treat you like a child. That was such a great job. Try again. And I'm not saying they shouldn't give you that. I'm saying when you go over there, realize they're not messing around, right? But we don't recognize that that's a very French way of looking at things. But you don't also recognize that 40%, at least so people teach us, 40% of the English language, how you doing, Brother Jermaine, is French. Why? Because a lot of the people who were kings were French. A lot of the kings of England and even the queens of England are French. There are some that are Scottish. There are some that, of course, come from different African parts of the African diaspora. There are some that were Anglican, but if we talk about William the Conqueror, who was originally known as William the Bastard, or the one who took out half of the Anglo population, and he was from Normandy. And if you know where Normandy is now considered to be in France, right? So if you start with him all the way through all these other people, right, you're going to discover that you're dealing with a whole bunch of French kings and queens. And so, matter of fact, they spoke Latin still, and even as well, because they're very romantic, right? And they're very romantic in value. And so if you go back, you realize that those who are romantic in value also have to be Greco-Roman in value. So why do you speak the alphabet, although you supposedly use, or why do you use the alphabet and use phonetic alphabet sounds rather than actually speak Anglo-ish or English. If you were to learn ancient English, you would realize that you do not speak a lot of English. How you doing? Notice reality. Why is that? How you doing, Big Roy? Well, the reason is because that you had what? You had a very Anglo-ish, or you didn't have an Anglo-ish mind. You had a French mind. You had a Roman mind. You had a Greek mind, and so the alphabet is a Greek character system. You see, so you don't even realize in order to write out a thought and so, for you to have a mindset of thought, you have to actually think like you're Greek. But in order for you to speak, you have to speak like an African, like a native indigenous American, like a you have to think like a Frenchman. You have to think like a Spanish person. You have to think like a Scottish person. You have to think because also a lot of English is very Germanic. So you have to think of like a German. That's why you say God instead of Alachem, because you Germans made gods. Gods could be anything a German, an original German, not even the people of Germany. They're not even the original people, a lot of them, right? But the gods that the Germanic people had, they could make anything a god. So that's why you say, "In God we trust." On your money, you've made your money a god. It is in the culture. It informs your beliefs. I mean, if you believe that all languages are Albanian, hey, that's for you to believe. That's not something that might be your story. It might be his story, and it's not necessarily our story, right? So, but you have every right to believe whatever you want to believe. And hello to you. We should probably start there, right? So you have to recognize what's going on with that, right? Like, and the reason why even with the Greek alphabet you're dealing with that is because the Greek alphabet, the Greeks didn't have, right? And somebody says this doesn't make sense to me. Well, let me help you, right? Or actually, excuse me, what somebody might say, what I'm about to say doesn't make sense, but you'll even hear people talk about the phonetic alphabet, and you've never thought about Phoenician culture. Okay, Albany, thank you once again. If that's your belief system, go ahead. I'm about to show you why we believe ours. But if you'd like to be able to teach on there, maybe we can set something up where one day we can actually, go and support your teaching. Um, but if we're looking at our culture and where we come from, because I actually can speak of where I come from as well, right? So many people believe that we have no mindset of ourselves, but we're in a position where we actually have a mindset of ourselves, right? So if we look at this the way we are informed and the way we break down our story, um, we know, right? Because I know where my maternal grandmother's family come. I know where my paternal, grandmother comes from, grandfathers, etc. Right. So I actually know where I come from. Hold on one second. Sorry. So, so in knowing this, excuse me. So in knowing where I actually come from and where my people come from and what my language is and how we spoke, and before somebody tries to tell us where we're from, there's something that we talk about. You talk about the phonetic alphabet. Would it be surprising to you to know that the Greeks at one point did not have an alphabet? It might be surprising to some, but see, because we don't have empathy for our enemy, we don't know where they're coming from, and we don't even have empathy of ourselves. If we be honest, we don't recognize the power in knowing our own language. We just said, hey, somebody tells us this is what our language is. We're just going to believe what everybody says and be done with it. But the reality is that you have something that belongs to you. You do have a culture. You do have a language. You do have a way of thought. You do have a love of self. It is possible to love yourself when you learn more about yourself. I know for many that's something that doesn't necessarily make sense to them. But when many people keep talking about I love me, I'm not going to listen to what anybody else has to say. This is what the Bible says. This is what this is. This is what that says. And we don't even know the culture of these people or even our own culture. Right. And we're going to get into this when we get into the Balaam doctrine portion of this. However, we really have to know who we are. See, if I'm going to talk about a phonetic alphabet or phonetic sounds, this is because the Greeks, remember, as much as we want to act like everything was always the way we see it today, things had to form, right? That sounds like a very basic thing, but we have to remind ourselves that a lot of stuff that's not here now today was not initially there. And if we want to get to the origin of something, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against these origins of things, right? How you doing, Sister Irena? How you doing, Prince? So we want to not wrestle against flesh and blood, but get into the origin of a thing. Okay, well then we got to start dealing with the origin. So what is the origin of a thing? What is the origin of this? The Greeks were not a people at one point. The word people means nation. The Greeks were not a people. How you doing, Coach Tamara? Right? How you doing, BUP? The Greeks were not a people at one point. Oh, he's being racist. No. There were a bunch of city-states who spoke very similar languages and everything, but they were not considered to be a nation, right? The Greeks were not a nation. I'm talking about even going back to what you used to call them ancient Greece. I'm talking about before, right? That BC, that BY, if you will, or some of you trying to do, that BCE. The Greeks were not a nation. They did not think of themselves as a nation. And really, even when they fought as a nation, they didn't think of themselves as a nation yet. But they did not even fight as a nation until they were dealing with the Medes and the Persians. Once the Medes and the Persians came into play, in order to protect themselves, they began to have to come together. And eventually, over time, they started taking all these different Greek deists or deities, because they didn't use the term God, right? They didn't use the term God because that's not part of their language. So all these deists and deities and stuff that they had to be put together. And that's why now you have this concept of Greek mythology, but they didn't have that concept until they had to come together, and they had to have somebody help them out. But that also means they did not have the same character system, and they had to go to a Phoenician, right? The same people who come from the Punicians or the Punics or the Punic Wars that were done. They went to one of them who was mixed with Israelite and Canaanite and Phoenician blood. And he used Afra, or what we would call today Paleo-Hebrew, as his own characters. And he was hired to make sure that he took something that was phonetic Phoenician, these Hebrew characters, and said, hey, can you turn them into Greek characters? That was never, right? That's how you get the Greek alphabet from the Hebrew alphabet, or what we now call today in modern Hebrew. Those of you who use modern Hebrew, you call it the Aleph Bet. And we teach it as the Aleph Bet at first before we start telling you the other things. Amen. We're going to explain it. Come on, Auntie Mary. We're going to explain how you doing. Is it noon or no one? I can't remember. Right? But how you doing? So he was hired. How you doing, Greta? He was hired. How you doing, Stargate? They were hired to bring this stuff over. You said, why don't modern Greeks speak ancient Greeks? Because of a lot of stuff that's mixed in and things like that. And some of those people that say that they're the ancient Greeks are obviously not the ancient Greeks. We know that, right? Like the way that, even just as far as, and I don't want to make it as simple as it is, but we know that Alexander the Great's father would have been somebody who looked completely different than Alexander the Great is portrayed today. We know this because it tells us what he looked like. And he tells us what he looks like in historical documentation, right? Even in historical documentation as well. So yeah, but once again, I'm trying to kind of talk about empathy for your enemy. So I apologize if I'm not going to break everything down to, once again, like it's got to be this, it's got to be that. I'm going to be somewhat obedient to where I've got to go today, especially because I might not have as much time as I normally would, because we've got to go and prayerfully make some greater strides with the land and get closer and closer to that today. We're going to go look at that some more today. So in all those things being said, right, we have to, and how you doing, Jesse? We have to realize, like, a lot of people have been duped. And so you think that the alphabet that you use is not connected to the alphabet. And it's really easy to say, because people go in all the argument that people are giving, all I have to do is take your letter A, right? I would have the little line that went in between it. If I took the letter A and I put it on the side, guess what that letter A is? It's Aleph or Alav, where it came from. If I take your lowercase b and I put it on its side, guess where it came from? Letter B. If I take Gamal and I put it on its side, guess what it, or if I put it like at a certain angle, it starts looking like the letter C. If I take Dalits and I put it on the side, it's going to be very squared, but it's going to look like the letter D. If I take He and I put it on its side, or if I take the letter E and I put it on the side and I attach a stem to it, guess what it's going to look like? It's going to look like the character He. Because it came from the alphabet. Before there was an alphabet, there was an alphabet, or what we now call today an alphabet. That's where it came from. So I have to see the culture in it. I have to have empathy for my enemy. I have to say to myself, does my enemy show signs that my destruction or my scorning or gleaning from me, right, taking from me and then telling me I have no culture? Are they showing constant and consistent signs that that's part of their culture? Like not saying this is not all white people are evil. This is not that. This is not all black people are righteous. This is not that. This is not that. This is me taking quantitative and qualitative data, using controls. How you doing, Brother Anthony? Taking this quantitative and qualitative data and just going through some basic scientific notation, right? And saying, can we come to a mindset, a thought process out of looking at this? How you doing, Carol? Looking at this without a mind to try and denigrate or do anything. I'm just trying to empathize. I'm trying to have empathy for my enemy. I'm trying to comprehend how they comprehend. I'm trying to feel how they feel. Right? Romantic values are a destroyer of Avda or Hebrew values. Right? All right, same to you as the Meyer. You said, who is my enemy? My enemy is anybody who is making sure that they are against humanity, the will of the Most High, my diaspora, who doesn't want my family to be strong, who makes my brother or my sister feel like they're less than. That is my enemy. That's my enemy. Including if it's within myself. You can be your own worst enemy. Anybody who's trying to cause somebody to not live in what they are called to be is an enemy to what the Most High wants that person to be. Anybody. That's why I just said this is not an anti-white thing. This is not all skin folk is kinfolk, because that's not true. Right? This is not all Israel is Israel, because that's not true. Anybody that's against what it is that I say, as far as loving each other and treating each other with respect and being who Yah has called us to be, anybody is an enemy. And even when somebody uses that term, right, and I'm not sure if you even meant it positive or negative, so I'm not even tripping off it. Either way, I wouldn't trip off for real, because it's not something that's going to stop truth. Anybody who's out here who's talking about the Bible but doesn't want to be honest about Revelation chapter 2, verse 14 is an enemy. You know, you can be an enemy and be an enemy in ignorance. You can have been born into something and thought that something was true. Just because you were born into something and thought that it was true doesn't mean that it was true. And you could have been doing some heinous acts believing that it was real. But Revelation chapter 2, verse 14, it tells you and I specifically, right? Read your Bible, it'll bless you. Revelation 2:14, it tells you specifically that you should be anti-Balaam doctrine. How you doing, Sister Knight? Balaam doctrine. What is Balaam doctrine? When I say Balaam doctrine, people look at you like you're crazy. Balaam doctrine. Then they start trying to say, oh, Baal. Yeah, that's what. Balaam doctrine. It's not even spelled the same. Okay, once again, Albany, if that's what you believe, then this might not be the place for you if you're not even willing to listen because you've already decided that you know exactly what it is. If that's your belief, that's your belief. You have every right. Over here, that's not what I'm talking about today, though. Sorry, not today. Right? Maybe we can have a discussion about that further at some point. It's just not going to, if that's what you're trying to press today, it's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. Call it whatever you will. Call me whatever you will. It's just not going to happen today. Right? Yeah, legal but not lawful. I see MIT Tracy. See, and so the reality is that you have to comprehend what's going on. Empathy for your enemy, like it's gonna be tough for a lot of people. And look, can I say something before I even go deeper? I do have empathy for my enemy in this regard as well. Hey, how you doing, Christopher? I do have empathy for my enemy in this regard as well. If I can just keep it 100 with you. You ready? I have much empathy for my enemy. If my enemy was told that what they were doing was righteous their whole life, and now somebody comes with something to tell them that what they might have believed is wrong. And I actually can do more than what many can, which is I can actually say, no, like, here's the relevance. Here's the truth. Here's what so-and-so said. Here's what his story says. Here's what the story says. Here's what our story says. Here's what was there. Like, here's some things that maybe the people who raised you are not being 100% honest about. Right? Like, I have to have empathy. How you doing, Henry? I have to have empathy. I do. I recognize that there are many people that will hear the truth. So yeah, we've talked about this before. Truth separates. Many people come together off of falsehoods all the time. And hello, Sister Patricia. I don't remember if I said hello to you or not. How you doing, Sister Kimberly? Like, this is real talk. Many people come together off of fallacies. You have been united off of fallacies. You believe that the United States is a country. And the United States has laws in place and tells you that they are not, they have codes, and they tell you they're not a country. 28 USC 300215 A, B, and C. The United States Code tells you specifically the United States is a corporation, it is a board, and it is publicly traded. It is not a country. Every state is a country. There are 50 states that have united, and they will allow the board to have certain things be done that all of them agree to. But the United States is not a country, but you were raised off of that. You were encouraged by that, right? You were brought together by that. You would come together and you would say your Pledge of Allegiance every day faithfully. You would say it every day faithfully. You would say you pledged allegiance to the flag. The word flag even means standard. So you would pledge allegiance to the standard of the United States of America and to the republic, because the word democracy is not even in your Constitution. So you pledged allegiance to a standard that was part of a republic for which it stood, for which it stands. And you said that it was one nation. It's not a nation, right? Under God, not under Elohim, but under God, a Germanic way of saying you can make God whatever you want it to be. Look up what Washington, D.C. is and see that George Washington is your father God. And that's why you tried to make a new constitution when the Moors went ahead and gave you permission to go ahead and make a constitution. And you did so through Masonic means. And that's why he has an obelisk where he's trying to make himself the modern Osiris. And you have no clue about that. Why? Because you were brought together under fictitious means. You were brought together as property. Therefore, you think of yourselves as straw men and don't even realize who you really are. And so therefore, in order for me to find out who I am and even have empathy for myself, if I've been taught by the enemy, one of the first people I must have empathy for is my enemy, so that I can comprehend what he comprehends. I can feel what he feels. So now I know when he does heinous things towards me, I can realize why he does heinous things towards me. How you doing, Joseph? Come on now. Yeah, we're programmed and indoctrinated. We're and how you doing, Yehuda? We're literally fighting each other and not even thinking about what was done. And that was 2828 USC, as in United States Code, 28 USC 3002 3002 1515 A, B, and C. That's all three subsections. and read it for yourself, and you will see that nowhere in there is the United States a country. Matter of fact, it doesn't have a capital, because if you look up the definition, even in Black's Law Dictionary, if you look up the definition of Washington, D.C., you would discover that you cannot have, right, a capital called Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C. is a territory, and the territory now is not a territory because the people that they had paid for the land to make it Washington, D.C. have asked for the territory back, but Congress won't give it back because they have no authority outside of Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. is always subject to Congress. Therefore, Washington, D.C., like a lot of native territories that people are waiting for, like the Sioux, keep waiting for the United States to give them their land back, according to a treaty that was signed, not a treaty that was signed, excuse me, according to the fact that they never actually signed up to have their land taken. The United States won't give it back. Why? Because they're using it and they have power due to it. Same thing they do with Washington, D.C. It's a fictitious place. It's a straw man. It's matter of fact, it's not even really a straw man. It's just a fictitious entity. A straw man has to be a fictitious entity that you use to be able to own something, right? So the United States is the straw man, but you have a mindset. You think that Washington, D.C. is the capital, but the United States of America cannot have a capital if it is not a nation, and if that supposed capital is not even real land, right? And if you look at even if you look at Washington, D.C., District of Columbia, you have to know that Washington is Osiris. That's why he has the obelisk, right? Osiris was pulled into pieces, and his wife, his Netger wife, Isis, was not able to put all his body back together, or she was able to find every part except his phallus. Guess what George Washington died of? He died of syphilis. That means that his wife could have tried as hard as she wanted, but the one thing she couldn't pull together was what? His phallus. He's buried, right? And so the phallus that sticks up the obelisk, that represents the phallus, right? And guess what? In the ground is the seed. You see, you're Washington, D.C., just like Osiris was laid out. George Washington is supposedly laid out. And on top of the Congress building is Columbia, a Greek deist, or what you would call God, right? And she flies, just like Isis did. She flies around to find the pieces of Washington that are missing and put them together. And then she made an obelisk that she could go ahead and ride on. And whether you believe it's necrophilia, or it's necrophilia either way, but whether, depending on which version of the story you want to believe in, out of the Book of the Dead and other versions that we have, you Isis was, no, I'm right, Osiris. Osiris was, he was either had no life or he was a zombie, but either way, it's necrophilia. She rode on top of that because she wanted to have a child by him, and then out of her came Heru. And guess who the modern Horus is, or this Eye of Horus that y'all just be saying over and over again, not realizing what you even mean, or what a lot of these people even mean when they're saying the Eye of Horus. The Eye of Horus are those who are coming out of the Congress building, those who are born out of Isis. This is a misappropriated story, right? Or not even misappropriate. It's just appropriate. It's appropriate. You know, the word appropriate literally means that somebody has taken it and they're trying to use it for profit. You said, was it Balaam that changed King Solomon through his want for foreign wives? I would say that's more lust. It got a similar result, I guess. If that makes sense. That's a great question, right? I would say it's lust. Did I change my stat? Well, I live as a non-citizen national, and therefore, if you know, because it's not just only paperwork. You should make sure your paperwork's done, of course, but it's not just paperwork. It's also making sure that you live as a non-citizen national. If you live by a bunch of stuff where there's going to be a bunch of people that are saying that, you know, it's a benefit privilege for this, that, or whatever, you got to pay taxes, for benefits privileges, but also if you eat off of somebody, then that's a benefit privilege. So if you're not worried about feeding yourself, having your own mindset, having your own culture, having your own belief system, there are certain benefits or privileges that come to that are private. If you want that to come from the public sector, then that's something else, right? But let me get back to this real quick as far as thinking. See, I'm empathetic with my enemy, so I know how my enemy thinks. I know how my enemy feels. That means I know what my enemy thinks about me, and I know how my enemy feels about me. I have empathy for my enemy, and that helps me to guard myself against my enemy, right? My enemy said, that the worst thing that could happen for my people that were coming, whether they came by ship or whether they had them here and they were native already, right? At that point, those people would have been my enemy, right? And anybody who wants to uphold them and say that, well, everybody had slaves and this and that or whatever, fine. So if you want to uphold slavery, I've said this before, slavery is bad no matter who did it, right? If I go to Ghana and I go to Elmina Castle and the guy who's doing the tour in Elmina Castle is not part of my tribe and he doesn't care that they did us dirty and he's giving us a tour, guess what? He wrong too. Matter of fact, he's a traitor and he'll be treated as such. So this is anybody can catch this. Don't see once again. That's why I got to make this up clear, because if we're not careful, people hear me talking about certain things, and you want to go into white versus black. Mm-mm. Not all skin folk is kinfolk. You will see this when you go to certain places, and you'll be like, "Whoa, wait a minute, they do what?" Like there are people you go over and you hear them talk about Leopold, and they'll call him their uncle. What? As many of us that he had strung across lines where they said it was almost like clothing lines. If you didn't know any better, you would have thought it wasn't people, it was clothes that were hanging. And you call him our uncle, you are a traitor. I know that's heavy language, that's strong language. I empathize with the person because of what happened, because see, I was colonized too. But I'm not gonna act like I should support. See, people get up there talking about the father of our nation. Our nation? See, this is when you got to have empathy for your enemy. Do you not realize that when it says we the people, you were not considered to be a human being? You were considered to be property. There wasn't no three-fifths of a human being. The three-fifths compromise, right, existed before they even were thinking about how to make you fit into that. The three-fifths compromise was about property. The North was supposed to pay 40% of taxes on property. The South was supposed to pay 60% of taxes on property. What happened after that was that, well, hold up, time out. Hey, Southerners, why don't we're in the North, we're paying taxes on our property up here, or we're paying taxes, I'm sorry, as people up here, or as persons up here, for these artificial persons called slaves. We pay taxes on them. You guys aren't paying taxes on them. What's going on? The South said, hey, well, we don't pay taxes on slaves. We don't even consider them to be persons. The North said, well, we're paying taxes. That's not fair. We're paying taxes. So they said, well, they're not persons, but they are property. Then the North said, well, if it comes to property, we already have something up here called the three-fifths compromise, where we pay 40% on property. You guys pay 60%. The South said, okay, we can abide by that. We will pay. They still didn't tell them exactly how much property or slaves they had, but they said, okay, we'll go ahead and we'll pay 60% on the ones that we go ahead and write out and tell you that we have. They didn't think you were three-fifths of a human being. They just paid three-fifths taxes on you because you were property. You were 0% of a human being. You see what I'm saying? Like, or people who talk about, well, women and this and that or whatever. Women, they didn't give you the right to vote. Didn't you go through a whole women's suffrage movement? And here you are now in feminism, fighting a fight, saying, I want just as much as they have, that I want to treat people the way that they did. Look at how they treated you. Why would you want that? See, when you lack empathy for your enemy, you start thinking that you're the same. You have to be able to have empathy for those that don't think like you. I can't, man, I don't even want to get into their mind and this and that. I get it. And I'm not saying you have to keep their mind, but you better learn a little something about it. Or else you're going to keep going through the same thing over and over and over again. I know we don't like to hear it like that because you think that empathy is only something that's supposed to be positive. But see, here's the wild part about being an empath. And I hear so many empaths say this, but I'm always like interested in why we don't think about this part of it. They'll say, man, I be feeling heavy. And as an empath, I can't hang around anybody anymore. And I can't do this and I can't do that because, they're just out here and people are draining my energy. Guess what? That's because you can feel the energy of negative and positive. Right. And what we do is we say, okay, I'm only going to deal with the positive only. And then we say, but why am I getting whipped upside my head with the negative? Because the negative still exists, whether you're going to ignore it or not. It is like somebody saying, man, you know what? And I'm not saying this can't work at all, but just hear what I'm saying. Hopefully you get the context. Man, you know what? I found out that I have cancer, but I'm not gonna let the devil defeat me, and I'm just gonna ignore it. And somebody in your family raises their hand and say, excuse me, just real quick, can I ask a question? And you go, oh, here come this hating person over here. Gosh, energy vampire. You already got these words from, and they ask a legit question, but you'll ignore it. You know what their legit question might be? Um, I love you a lot. Is it possible you can stop drinking all the high fructose corn syrup? And is it possible that maybe you go into like a vegan diet at least for a little bit? And is it possible that you start getting into the sunlight more? And is it possible that you stop drinking as much milk and stuff and so much sugar and so much fat and so much stuff in your diet? Oh gosh, man, I just said I'm going to ignore it. I've already claimed the victory. That's what you say. And the person just looking at you like you can claim the victory, but you still doing the same stuff that caused it in the first place. You don't even have empathy for the enemy. You don't have empathy for the enemy that has this stuff in place to keep you sick. So if somebody says, I have empathy for the enemy, I know that you're going to have to give up some things so that you can be more than a conqueror. Because they know you think like a conqueror. You don't think like more than a conqueror. They empathize with you. And you don't like the fact because they're empathy for you, you start saying they're a hater. You're this, they're that. They don't really love you. If they really had love for you, they go ahead and let you leave you alone. But because they love you, they won't leave you alone. Yeah, empathy's needed during metamorphosis, sure. Amen. But empathy's needed first. To whom much is given, much is required. Part of that is empathy. To whom much is given, much is required. That's where I thought we were going somewhere different. That's where I thought we were going to be focused on only today. Um, However, I see now why it had to shape up this way. How you doing, Iron Grit? To whom much is given, much is required. Empathy. I want freedom. To whom much is given, much is required. Who's over you? It might be required that you might have to learn your enemy. No, I just want freedom in the name of Yahshua and all this stuff. Okay, who is your enemy? No, you don't comprehend. I prayed about it. He paid it all. Who is your enemy? I'm coming into the kingdom. The kingdom has an enemy. All right. I hope you're catching the context. Right? Yeah. I hope you're catching the context. Who I'm coming into the kingdom. The kingdom has enemies. Yeah, seek ye first the kingdom of Elohim and all his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto thee. And give no thought for tomorrow will take care of itself. That's great. That's true. That's awesome. Why is it telling you focus on the kingdom and make sure you're protected and make sure you have the helmet of salvation? Why is it saying that you should have the sword, which is the word of Yah? Why is it that you're saying that you have to have the breastplate of righteousness? Why is it saying that you have to have your feet shod with the preparation of the interpretation of the word of Yah concerning peace? Why is it saying that you have to have the belts of truth on to gird your loins? Why is it telling us all these things? Because you're about to be in a battle. The empathy, once again, what is the definition of empathy? Before we try to make it so mystical, it's not practical. Empathy is saying that I comprehend what somebody else is going through and I can feel what somebody else is going through. And so I have empathy. See, it's not surprising to me when somebody hears me just mention something that could be considered to be racial, and they automatically start going off because you've been taught in ignorance that, hey, man, race doesn't matter, color doesn't matter until it does, right? But you were taught that anything that somebody would say about race means that they actually are a terrible human being, right? And if I could really break it down, you know why? Because you can't think about pop and neat. What they say? What are these things? Pop and grandmama and what is it? I don't even know what's the one, Meow or whatever that is, and all that stuff. You can't think about them as being the people that was, we forget when you see that place, and forgive me, this is for educational purposes only, trigger warning, Meemaw. Yeah, that's what they say, Meemaw and all that. When trigger warning, right? If you need to turn away for a second, give me about 30 seconds or so and you can come back on, right? But trigger warning, I'm about to talk about something as far as something that's a little nasty as far as, homiletically speaking, not just a little, it's heinous, right? You forget that when you see the picture of one of our brethren being cursed because of what they're doing to him from a tree, and he's sitting there, and they did this after church service, and they had a picnic to where you picked an N-word and strung him up, and you made sure that the whole congregation was aware that that was going to happen. You forget that there are pictures that on the bottom of those pictures, as that's happening and as they're burning the bodies even and getting ready to split up the bodies so that people can auction on them and they can do a fundraiser for church so they can go ahead and literally make money off of your body. You forget that there's a little girl sometimes or a little boy sometimes in those pictures, and they're looking up at the body and they're in the midst of the crowd and they're dressed in their Sunday best and they are smiling while the picture's being taken. And if that's a picture from the 40s or the 50s or the 60s or the 70s, that black and white picture, well, that I know they want you to think that's a long time ago. See, but I got to have empathy for my enemy. I know how they think, and I know timelines, and I have to say to myself, well, wait a minute. If that's the little girl who was about 8 years old, let's say in the 1950s, that ain't that long ago, because my daddy was born in 1953. My mama was born in 1955. So if that little girl was alive in the 50s, she probably still alive today. And if she's alive today, and let's say she'd be a little older than my mom and dad, if they were born in the 50s, and maybe that was an 8-year-old girl there. Okay, well, if they were born in the 40s, that means that they could be late 70s, early 80s. Is it possible that that's somebody's grandmama or great grandmama in that picture? Of course it is. That makes me think to myself, well, wait a minute. Is that the same great or grandmama or great grandmama? Let's say that's the same great grandmama that taught somebody's grandmother. Sure. And could that be the same great grandmother who taught somebody's mother? Sure. And could that be the same great grandmother that held that person when they were born as a baby? Sure, it does. Which means that that person could be the same person that has an emotional response whenever I say something about that, because in their mind, I'm talking about their great grandmother. And great grandmother held me in her arms and she kissed me. There's no way this woman could kiss me and smile about you being hung at the same time. It just doesn't make sense. Unless it makes all the sense in the world, pun intended. I'm just saying. See, and so I empathize. I don't necessarily sympathize, like I said earlier, but I do empathize. I get it. And that's a lot. That's really heavy. That this woman who all I think about is love, right? Let me look up something real quick before I say it. I want to make sure I'm correct on something. I want to look up this next part because I'm about to say something. I want to make sure. Yeah, I thought so. So yeah, so we're not. So nobody's really 100% sure. I was looking up, did Adolf Hitler have children? He had a bunch of women besides just his, what was it, his cousin that he married or whatever. Um, and if you know about Adolf Hitler, one of the things that was quiet is kept, because he had to look like he was, you know, not just the Führer, but he had to look like a god. That's what they were making him out to be. So he he had issues with his testicular region. Let's just call it that. He had it since he was a child, and people actually made fun of him. One of the reasons why he had such a what do you call that? Thank you, baby. He had a complex that he had was because he had I forget what you call it, but basically I think he had one that was inverted or something like that. So because of that, he was made fun of. When he was young, they might, if he took showers with people or whatever, when they were children, people would make fun of it. Or when he was in the military, people made fun of it, or all this stuff, right? So that was actually a complex that he had. And so there's a possibility that maybe he couldn't have had children, some people say, because they weren't able to deal with it medically correctly back then. I don't know. But there's a possibility he could have had children, or even if they weren't his biological children, he had children that he adopted, took care of like they were his own, etc. I say all that, right, to say that these children who he treated so well, whether you want to say they were biologically his or not, it doesn't mean that he was okay with all children, obviously. Correct? Right? So we don't know for sure if he had children or who was adopted children, or how long his adopted children lasted, if they all lasted. Some of them changed their name, this and that, or whatever. We don't know exactly 100%, right? We're it's people. A lot of people will tell you flatly the answer is no. Some people say maybe. Nobody can really say yes for sure. Whichever way you want to go. But let's just say the children that he took care of, in their mind, Adolf Hitler was the sweetest man ever. It's just sad to know most of us only have second grade reading level. Parson text shows that first quarter. Hmm. Yeah. But I'm just here to tell you, those children he took care of thought that he was the sweetest person, right? They say he loved his wife so much, even though he had all these other partners. But he loved his wife so much, even though she probably was partially afraid of him too, because if you don't do what he says, you're not long for this earth. However, we don't think about there's no empathy in this. Now, imagine that somebody who has Adolf's mindset, let's say they're not Adolf, but they have his mindset, and they teach their children. Do you not think that their children who thinks that their father is so sweet and does all these things, and their father says everybody who doesn't look like them must go? Do you not think that these children start to now have to come into a cognitive dissonance? Or even maybe not, you wouldn't even call it cognitive dissonance. They just make a real decision that says, hey, if my father shows me this type of love, but he says that those people don't deserve this type of love, do you not think that it's a natural response for them to say, I'm going to go with what my father taught me? You see, and it's a natural response. Now, for some of you, you were taught that George Washington is your father, right? Some of you were taught that George Washington is your father, right? The father of your nation, because you think this is your nation, or you think your state is your nation, or you think that your borough is your nation, or whatever. What's your natural response going to be? You said your natural response is to be 1 Samuel 15:3 and off everybody. Hey, if that's what Yah is leading you to do, right? I don't know if he's leading me to off everybody right now, but he is leading me to come together with our people, right? And so in you know what is our natural response? See, the empathy for your enemy will show you a lot. Once again, your enemy is about Balaam doctrine. Arm yourself with Numbers 22, 23, and 24. And see that your enemy is empathized with you. They've studied you. They comprehend you more than you comprehend yourself. You said, in spite of never having. Oh yeah. Well, I'm not saying I would do that. I'm saying that was somebody's response, not my response. But I get what the person said, or I get even why somebody would feel like that. By the way, I was somebody who had a lot of hate in my heart for a little while too. You had to learn how to get past it. When you learn the heinous acts that somebody does and the real level of it, and not just the stuff. And I was taught a lot of different things as a child too, and still, was trying to hang in there. Became part of the military. It was out of necessity. Needed to make a living, but tried my best to hang in there and stuff. And you realize real quick, wait a minute, this is not for us. And it was Numbers 22, 23, 24. Right? You're warned about it in Revelation chapter 2, verse 14. Balaam doctrine. But people don't know what that is because we don't really get into our word. But it's right there in Numbers 22, 23, and 24. And this is why Balaam doctrine was even introduced, right? Before you get to the prophet Balaam, you have to first say to yourself, why did they even want to give Balaam the prophet money to come against his own people? I got to empathize. I got to say, wait a minute, what was it that made them feel this about Yashta? Right? What is it? How you doing, Minister Morel? What is it that made the enemy say, let me pay the prophet to speak against Israel? And the first thing that happened when you read is you'll discover that Israel was not going to do anything to them. Israel was focused on getting to the land of Canaan to be able to collect on the tithe that was given from Abraham to from Abraham to who we call Melchizedek, right? Right, really more like Malach Zadok, right? But nevertheless, Melchizedek, that's what we say today. And they were going to collect on what was due. Yah had separated them, he had saved them. And what had happened was, is in all this stuff, all these surrounding nations, we always act like the story is just like Israel and Kemet or Israel and Cush Kemet or just a small group. No, everybody around was hearing what was going on. Everybody around knew what was happening. And the Midianites and others, yeah, the king was paranoid, right? And saw, well, yeah, saw what was happening, and saw how Israel was being affected, and saw how Israel was being protected while other nations were being affected, and realized that he couldn't stop Israel if Israel was going to come at him. But Israel had no qualm with them, had never said anything, had never sent a messenger out, had never sent an envoy out, had never done anything like that. They just said, we're going to keep on pushing forward to where we're supposed to go. And because they were afraid of what would happen if Israel ever decided to come against them, they had in their mind, Israel could attack. Israel could attack. And so they decided to pay a prophet who was not an Israelite, but was a prophet. But they decided to pay the prophet to go ahead and speak against Israel, because they knew that when you're a prophet of Israel, when you're a prophet of Yahweh, when you're a prophet of the Most High, that whatever comes out of your mouth, right, it always happens. Now, they didn't realize that if you start speaking against Yah, that you're no longer really going to have Yah's protection, right? And he's not going to let whatever comes out your mouth happen. But in their mind, let's go ahead and speak and pay this person, and they're going to speak against Yah's people, and then it's going to cause the people to fall short. That was what was in their mind. We'll pay him, and he'll come over here, and he'll falsify documentation, if you will. He'll say things against Yah's people that are not true, and the people of Yah will end up falling because of it. That was their mindset. That was the plan. That was Balaam doctrine. That's what they thought was going to cause all this hurt and frustration and pain and everything. That was going to be it. If they could just get the people of Yah, if they could get the leadership, if they could get the prophet, if they could get these Ezekiel 34 preachers that are preached against, that it says, woe unto them that they should be cursed and that they're going to be taken out by Yah himself. But if in their mind, if we can get them to speak against Yahshua, then we could really cause some dissension in the ranks that ultimately happens in Numbers 25 anyways. But that's what they were trying to do in Numbers 22, 23, 24. You're warned about it in Revelation chapter 2, verse 14. And a lot of you who are New Testament people can't honor the fact that the New Testament is not a separate testament. There's one testament, but somebody wrote old in front of one and new in front of one, going back to Alexandrian doctrine, which doesn't even believe in what you believe in as far as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But you don't recognize how culture comes into play. How you doing, Cray Dog Mom? So here these people are trying to cause something to be, trying to put something in place that is not the will of Yah. Here they are trying to make something work that's not real. Right? Here they are trying to do something and trying to cause people to fall for the okie doke, trying to get them to lose their inheritance, trying to get you to agree to something that has nothing to do with who you are. Right? Trying to get you to become something that's not who you are. And a lot of us still falling for the okie doke, trying our best to bow down to this stuff that makes no sense. It tells you about Balaam doctrine. It tells you, but see, you got to be empathetic with your enemy. They were doing this long time ago. They were doing it before you called people white people. They were doing it before you called people European. They were doing it before you said there was a Greek alphabet. They were doing it before you were born. It's a continuation of the same thing. And I've also got to be empathetic towards our enemy that's in house. You said a lie, half truth, culture mixed with half lies, cased or caused to confuse. hmm You have you have to have empathy for your enemy, even the enemy or the one that's in your camp. I can empathize with them too. Balaam considered going against the word of Yah. Almost died because of it on the road to trying to get that payday. Right? For those of you who know the story, almost died on his road to trying to get the payday. Almost passed away. Almost was unalived. Almost had his life taken on the road to being anti what Yah told him to be. Trying to speak against Yah's people. And once again, everybody who's on the podcast, on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok, we appreciate you so much. Thanks for being on with us. We appreciate you. Was so busy, right? Was so busy trying to ensure that he got a payday. That he was trying, he was struggling. He knew he couldn't do it, but he was trying to figure out how can I please Yah and please man at the same time? Is it possible? How can I apologize to the LGBTQ plus community for being against their belief system and at the same time how can I make sure that I tell people that I'm still biblically inclined? Is it possible? I'm talking about specifically, the bishop who just did it. um how can you hear what I'm saying? How you doing, Sunni? How can I find a way to be an alpha male and at the same time be a husband? This is what these people are trying to do. Right? How can I, you see, that's what they're trying to do. And they're getting paid. This is what Balaam doctrine is. Somebody's walking up to your brothers and sisters and they see that they are in this Deuteronomy 28 fix. And they see that they're tender, unprepared, and they're giving them payments for doing stuff. We talked about this before with Pastor Todd. Pastor Todd, he got all this stuff and all these people talking bad about him and this and that or whatever. Pastor Todd was made a pastor when he was 15. In our culture, you're not even supposed to be a rabbi until you turn 30. He was only halfway qualified as far as just years on earth, but somebody gave him the responsibility of doing what it is that he does. He's not ready to be a rabbi yet, but they gave him the stuff, and now he's getting the money, and now he gets this prestige. And look, all he has to do is allow people that are gender fluid to speak, and he doesn't have to say. All he has to say is, "Look, if it was up to me, I don't even like it. If I was there from the beginning, I would have said, well, yeah, you got some people. This is what he's preached. Yeah, you got some people who are male, you got some people that are female, but what about these people that are in between? I would have made a category that was in between. But hey, I'm not him. Therefore, telling you that, hey, I'm going to still serve him, but at the same time, I disagree with the one that I serve. You see what I'm saying? And that way I can still figure out how to keep all this stuff together. You said if you say that this is generational, then the enemies are serpents, just as their serpent ancestors. But once again, just like if we say that you are cursed, we can say the generational curse is there, but it also means you can come out of the generational curse. So yeah, you can say that these are generational serpents, but it doesn't mean that they can't also have a chance to be better and greater than they are as well, right? It works on both ends. So I know a lot of us who you could say are have gone through the situation and have gone through generational curses, DNA memories, things like that, and mistreat people, and they still mistreat people even when they're given the truth. Everybody has a choice. How you doing, Pastor? Everybody has a choice, right? And I have no heaven or hell to put anybody in. How you doing, Asla? So that's something I learned a long time ago. When I released myself of trying to answer questions or trying to be that person of, well, this person deserves this and this person's going to hell and blah blah. Look, I'm here to tell you that this is what Yah's looking for. And if you're not careful, there's a place for people that are disobedient. There's a place for people that are obedient. But I've also learned it's not up to me to be the judge. I'm just telling you what the judge lays out. See, if I'm telling you about how to do stuff in a courtroom, it doesn't mean that what I'm telling, like, I might not be allowed, or like, I'm not going to be the judge ultimately. You're going to have to make sure that you can present your case in front of the judge. I'm not the judge. I can tell you what to expect. I can tell you what this and that means. I can tell you what UCC code or what state code or whatever it is you might want to look into. I can tell you what Supreme Court case is, this, that, or whatever. I can tell you if you're going to a federal court versus a state court, you might want to think about it different. I can give you a bunch of little things underlying and stuff like that, but you still going to have to put in some research and be ready to defend yourself. So even that part of it, I learned how to empathize not only with my enemy, I've learned how to empathize and think as the Most High does, and my thoughts are not His thoughts. So I had to come outside of myself. See, there's a lot of people who are ready to watch everybody be your slave and to die and to be under your feet and to be under your nail. And you said you're going to enslave them the way that they enslaved you, not realizing that you're trying to repay hate for hate. What makes you better than your enemy? And if the Most High says vengeance is mine, why do you think that you need to be part of that? I didn't say you can't defend your family. I didn't say you can't tell the truth about something, but it's not on me to make sure I find vengeance. You know, I'm not even coming at you specifically, by the way. I hope this is not taken that way. I'm just trying to tell you, like, vengeance is not, vengeance is not even mine, right? Prime example, right? Prime example. I was downstairs today in this place that we're at. We were here maybe 10 days ago. We've been traveling a lot. Ended up in the place that we're at now. There's only pretty much one place that's kind of worth coming to out of all these places. If I'll be honest, I'm not going to talk bad about the city, but it is what it is, right? Just as far as places to stay overnight, and make sure you're going to be safe. You don't really have too many alternatives, right? So the place that we're at, last time I came here, I was kind of iffy about coming back here because of some things that were kind of weird. And then the person who I dealt with on the way out was different than the person that I dealt with on the way in. So the person who assisted us in the night, we dealt with a lot of people who didn't like the fact that we were really blessed when we came here. And this person, we had favor with this person when we came through the door. And now all of a sudden we came back and we were really blessed again. And the person who mistreated me on the way out was there with the person that was trying to treated us very well on the way in. Now, I could have right then, because I still have it in me where I've been thinking about, am I going to call this hotel owner and this and that or whatever and talk to him, blah, blah, and let him really know what's going on? Or am I going to let it go? And I hadn't done anything, but I really was kind of irritated the way with the stuff ended last time here. Nevertheless, though, it's a place where we enjoyed the experience and was like, okay, I guess we'll come here this time. And so I came in and they weren't here last night. Somebody else was here. Better experience again when that person was here. But in the rising, went down to get ready for today and went outside, got some sun, grabbed some water and everything from downstairs before I came back up. And as soon as I came back, when I went downstairs, I'd seen the person who we had favor with and the person who was so anti against us. And long story short, when we were on our way out, right, we had been promised when we came here the first time, especially because they had kind of messed up some of the stuff with the people who had set it up for us to be able to stay here. They had messed up where they were trying to charge us for something that was already taken care of. So I was kind of irritated with that. And that was a whole long thing. It was like an hour and a half. We could have checked in. We could have got something to take care of, making sure we had stuff to eat, whatever. And instead, we're sitting here waiting for this person who can't see within. I literally told him all he needed to do in the system, and he wouldn't listen. One of our people who is looking at me like, oh, no, you can't, you don't deserve stuff like that. You can't be smart enough to blah blah. And really, I told my wife, I was like, he doesn't know how to do his job. I think that's part of it too, right? But long story short, the person we had favor with, they came up, fixed it, boom, 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 gave us a really nice place or whatever, with a lot of space to where it was like 2 rooms and one, all that type of stuff, right? And for, we didn't have to put anything extra on or whatever, especially because they messed up. On our way out, there's somebody who doesn't really like us. It's one of those people that's going to be nice to you, but doesn't really like us. And it's like, okay, well, we asked for a late checkout. Oh, well, you got to pay $25 for late checkout. It's like, no, you guys promised us it would be in there. Well, it's not in the system, blah, blah, whatever. So at first I was going to be irritated. I was just going to go upstairs and be like, baby, they're not going to want it. This is the last time we were here. Oh, well, baby, no, we're not going to blah, blah, whatever. Let's just go ahead, be ready. I'm done with it or whatever. We'll talk to it. And Holy Spirit said, look, I blessed you where you don't have to worry about it. Somebody took care of it. $25 not going to hurt you. Get off your pride, get off of this, get off of your issues, get off of this. Just go ahead. So I came back. I apologized to the person who's mistreated me. And I say, hey, it's not even you. We had an issue. This stuff should have been in the system already. You shouldn't even be in this position to where you should actually have to serve us correctly or anything or treat us with respect. And yeah, I'm still kind of verbally sparring with him, but I was nice, and I was like, so you should be somebody to look at us, this and that, but okay, that's what you want to do, whatever, go ahead. Because also too, if you know about how some of this stuff works, people pocket some of this money and stuff too. So in my mind, I'm like, I know this is, so watch this time we come here and we don't deal with them when we come here in the beginning. Today, I'm getting ready to do the live. I see the person who gave us favor, who we had favor with last time. I see the person that we have favor. I say to both of them, hey, it's nice to see you guys again. I go outside, and here come back my feelings. Oh, blah, blah, this and that or whatever. Frustrated. I should walk up to the person we have favor with who's over the hotel, and I should tell them that this is blah, blah, and this person doing this and this and that or whatever, and this is how I got. Remember, you were supposed to do this. Let me go ahead and get which is not even my, technically my money anyway. Let me get my money back, right? Going and all this stuff. I just walk up and I say, you know what? Nice to see you guys again. Real quick, if you don't mind, what time is breakfast in? Okay, cool. In case we want to go down and get some fruit or something like that, or get some juice or whatever. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Oh, and by the way, also too, is it all right if I have a late checkout? Again, same issue I had before. And this time the person who I have favor with is right there, and she's on the computer. The guy who was, acting kind of weird. He was doing so nice, but acting weird. He's sitting behind her. And I go, and I didn't even mean anything by it. I'm just willing to be submissive this time. Hey, it's $25 for a late fee, right? There's a $25 late fee for us to say late, no problem, right? Because that's what he told last time. If we stayed till 12, he said you just for an hour or whatever, we got to charge you. Okay, all right. She goes, oh no, well I can let you stay till 12. Just just regular stuff that you think happens at a hotel all the time. Regular stuff. Yeah, I can let you stay till 12. Anything after that, we have to charge you. Oh really? And I look at him. Now he's seeing at that moment in time, vengeance is on the table. Because I can say, oh, because I could say out my mouth, this is what I wanted to say. How you doing, D? How you doing, Valerie? If I didn't say so already. This is what I wanted to say. Oh, because last time he told me that matter of fact, he took out of my card $25 because he said that I had to pay the 25. Like I'm in position at this point. I could. It's on now, right? But it's not worth it. And that's a small thing that I'm saying. But I had empathy for him, and I was literally outside, and it was telling me like something about to happen to show you why you need to make sure you keep it humble and why you have empathy for your enemy, and just let me deal with the stuff or whatever. And the place that we're staying in, we actually ended up saving money again, right? Where stuff was taken care of again by us going through a different way of getting the place. right? Once again, why empathy? Empathy doesn't mean sympathy. Empathy doesn't mean you're a doormat. Empathy means what? To be able to comprehend your enemy or anybody you have empathy for. You comprehend them and you can feel what they feel. So when I see that happen, I still might call or do whatever, who knows? Right, about the first experience. But at the same time, right, it puts me in a position to where I recognize this is like a regular thing. I can't come to Alabama or certain parts of Georgia and stuff like we're traveling around now and not expect to get sundown town type of results, right? But I comprehend that. But also, what I'm trying to get at, see, this is a small thing. It's not a huge thing, but hear what I'm saying. This is a small thing. At the end of the day, I have to recognize this is how they operate. You said he gave no reason for empathy. Well, if you don't think that you should have, once again, you're thinking about sympathy. Or if we're saying, maybe you're saying, I don't know, let me say it like this. Maybe you think that I'm saying that I gave him the right to do whatever he wanted, or I shouldn't worry about blah, blah, whatever. At the end of the day, him doing what he did it affect me in any way, shape, or form? It frustrated me, but did it really stop anything I was doing? Am I wearing linen? I don't know. It looks like, I guess it looks like linen to you. Okay. If that's your way of saying hello, how are you doing? I guess. Right. I'm not going to stand up to show you a whole tunic. If you want to, you can feel what it looks like, whatever you want. Right. But hear what I'm saying, right? You have to comprehend your enemy. Oh, you're talking about the actual linen, the actual feel of linen. Okay. I thought you were talking about linen as in sheets. My bad. But yeah, you see, comprehending what you're talking about. Like, I comprehend my enemy. I do empathize with them. I recognize why somebody's going to get angry with me in the street when I say, no, I'm not really feeling Make America Great Again, because Make America Great Again started with Ronald Reagan. He ran on Make America Great Again. If you're telling me that you need to make America great again, then it means that America wasn't great the first time and it's not going to be great this time. Therefore, it's not going to be great next time. Right? I comprehend. Right? To empathize. I comprehend it. And I comprehend why that person would be frustrated. I comprehend why my own people will be frustrated. I comprehend it. It's easier for me to actually forgive when I comprehend that there's a bunch of people who just are ignorant, if I can say it like that. It's easier for me to forgive because I empathize. Empathy is me being able to look at somebody and say, it's not my experience, but I can see why you're there. It's not my experience to have been put in a position to where it's not my experience to call a woman the B word, cover her whole body up, and say that if she doesn't agree with what I'm saying, that she's not holy. It's not my experience. However, when I look at some of these brothers' experiences, I can see why they think like that, so I can have conversation where they're at. See, empathy causes you to meet somebody where they're at. You see what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people, you can't meet people where they're at. You can't have a conversation where somebody is actually coming from. A lot of people cannot do that. It's very difficult for a lot of people to actually have a conversation where they are. A lot of you, your children, are dealing with certain things, and it's hard for you to have a conversation with your children what they're dealing with because you're not coming from where they're coming from. You said, yeah. Point is, he knew that I knew, right? And watch this. And I did have power. And watch this. Just because I didn't wield the power in a way that people think I should have wielded it. Is it wielded it? Wielded? I think it's wielded it, right? Just because I did not wield it in the manner in which people think I should have wielded it does not mean that I don't have the power. And I like what you said. See, that takes us to a place. Just because I see, a lot of you think that because Yah has given you power, right, to tread upon serpents, you start looking for serpents. May I say it's not wise to tread upon serpents, even if you can? It's not wise to look for them just for the sake of treading upon them. If you have to walk in that way and there happens to be some serpents in the way, then sure, tread upon them. But it is not wise to just look for serpents to tread. But everybody's so, I got the power to tread on these serpents. I step on the enemy's head. I'm going to the club and I'm going to preach. Well, who told you to go? Did the Holy Spirit say go there? That sounds like a you thing sometimes. I'm not saying every time, but sometimes people be out here doing a you thing and not a him thing. How you doing, Sister Barbara? He said you feel the empathy, but he would have been asked to discount by saying empathize for his judgment. If that's what it is, right? If that's what you're led to do, right? If that's what you're led to do, you do what you're led to do, right? But what I'm saying is, so sometimes, see, that's when culture steps in. See, but is first things first. At least learn, see, because watch this. At least see where that person's coming from. I can see where somebody get mad at you. I can see where you're coming from, right? People get mad at you. I can see where you're coming from. Then people be waiting. Oh, so you gonna say sorry? You gonna do that? No, no. I mean, I can see where you're coming from, though, right? I can see like why that would anger you or frustrate you, or yeah, like yeah, that really does hurt. And they just be waiting. So you like, no, I mean, I'll apologize. I can explain where I'm coming from. But if you're waiting for me to say I'm sorry for the whatever, like I can see where you're coming from. This guy that I was dealing with, like I said, down at the front desk, like you know, somebody might even be thinking like he's waiting. Okay, you're gonna apologize. You're gonna give me something. One of my favorite examples of this, thank you, Holy Spirit, is when Yehoshua deals with Simon Peter. How you doing, Marlon? Right? When Yehoshua deals with Simon Peter, what happens? Simon Peter denied him 3 times before the cock crowed, right? 3 times. How did Yehoshua deal with it? Did Peter ever apologize? Did Peter ever say, I'm sorry? He felt sorry. We know this. He felt sorry the moment he heard the cock crow. He does certain things after the death of the Messiah that show that clearly he's not, he's feeling certain things. But did he ever say sorry? He holds the keys, but that's true. But did he ever say sorry? Right? Let's deal with this now. See, we're sitting up here and like, if this certain person doesn't say sorry, if these people don't do this, did Peter ever say to the Messiah, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry that I denied you. I'm sorry that I literally chopped somebody's ear off one moment, and then the next moment I acted like I didn't know you. Did he ever say, I am sorry? No. Did he ever apologize? Did he ever explain? That's what an apology is. Did he ever explain what he did? No, because an apology doesn't even mean you need to say I'm sorry. Did he ever explain it? No. Watch this. Did Yehoshua, did the Messiah ever demand that he say he was sorry, or ever even demand that he apologize? Roll with me on this, right? Because see, this is part of what's causing this disconnect and stuff. This person and these people better apologize, and they better listen to us, and they better teach what we tell them to teach, and blah blah. You're concerning yourself with something that's not even required. He did deal with it, though. He did deal with it, but he never had him apologize. He never had him say, I'm sorry. He never apologized. He never said he was sorry, even though Peter might have felt like it was necessary, didn't even know how to do it. But right. But he didn't stop hanging around the Messiah when the Messiah came back. You said it comes through actions, not words. For some people, that depends on your love language. Some people have a love language where it's words of affirmation, so they want to hear you say it. Some people have a love language of acts of service. They want to see you do something. Some people have a love language of gifts. That's why they like, chocolates and flowers when you do something wrong. Some people have a love language of quality time. Fine, you know what? Spend some time with me to make up for it. Some people have a love language of physical touch. That's why some of y'all like makeup sex. Right? So I'm not gonna I can't box everybody into the same thing. But this is what the Most High does. This is what the Messiah does in this moment. You ready? He sees him out there fishing. Peter doing what he does. This is what Peter been doing since he was a little boy. This is what Peter did when he met the Messiah. He was a fisherman, and then the Messiah said, I'll make you a fisherman of men. The one who said, I'll make you a fisherman of men has passed away. He gone. He goes right back to being a fisherman. He just goes back to what he knew before. I guess this isn't going to be what I thought it was going to be. It goes right back. But something in him still yearns for this person that he let down who was going to make him a fisherman of men. All of a sudden, he's out there and they hear a voice. Hey, hey, who's that? Hey, cast your net on the other side. Something about him realizes that sounds like it's the Messiah. They don't really know 100% yet, but they're like, okay, if that's him or if that's the spirit of him even, let's listen. They throw it to the other side. They realize that it's the Messiah. Peter, gets himself together, starts swimming, trying to get to the Messiah. The rest of them have to drag all this fish in that they went because of the very thing that they thought they were doing. And Peter thought he had been doing his whole life. He couldn't get done, but somehow, some way, the Messiah comes and just says, shift your net over just a little smidge, and you're going to catch fish on a level that you didn't catch before. There's a whole lesson in that by itself. And then they start eating together. And it's the Messiah cooking. I know some of y'all are great chefs. When the Messiah makes some fish, it's on point. You know what I'm saying? This is not just grandmama recipe. This is just not grandmama recipe, right? This is the Messiah is having something. They eating and everything's great. And he asked Peter a question. Doesn't say apologize, doesn't say I'm sorry. He's empathizing. He already knows, right? He's the Messiah. He knows what Peter was thinking anyway. But he's gone through the empathy portion. And he says, all right, with the empathy I have, how can I restore this man so that he can be, right? Somebody said he got the keys. He got the keys. Okay, cool. How can I restore this man that he would get the key and be able to use it? Because right now he's in a position where he's so ashamed he won't even use the key. So what does he say? He says, Peter, do you love me more than these? In other words, you love me more than this fish that I just made? And now we got to have a conversation. Yay, Lord. We haven't really had this conversation. Why are you asking me this? All this stuff, this trauma now, is triggered. Yay, Lord, I love you more than this. Okay. I don't need you to say I'm sorry. I don't need you to pop. This is what I need you to do. Feed my sheep. This actually means feed my adult sheep. If you believe you're Anunnaki, that's fine. That's not what that's not my belief system. But if that's what you uphold, no problem, right? So he says, feed my sheep. How you doing, Patrick? Then they eating breaking bread or breaking fish, if you will, but breaking bread. And then he says, hey, Peter. Yeah. He didn't ask the first time. Maybe he'll ask this time. Yeah. Do you love me more than these? Yeah, asking the same question. Oh, he really want me to say sorry. But yeah, you Lord, you know I love you. Come on, you know I love you. Can I get back to this fish? He says, okay, feed my lambs, feed the little ones. Okay, all right. I'm gonna keep eating. Peter, do you love me more than these? At this point now, and Peter is a wild brother sometimes. Yeah, Lord, yeah, yes, I love you. And he says, okay, feed my sheep. This time it means feed all of them, right? Feed everybody you come into contact with. Not one sorry, not one this is what you must do, not one this and that or whatever. He's building up trust at this point. I've told this to people many times. It's easy to forgive people, but sometimes we don't build up trust very well. Matter of fact, we don't even believe that it's necessary at times to build up trust. He said, how y'all trust us even when we don't trust ourselves. Mm-hmm. Amen. We were just talking about that yesterday, matter of fact, right? Last night with Job. Right? That Yah could trust Job. See, we just go, right? That Job trusted Yah. Though he slay me, yet I'll trust him. But Yah trusted Job. it starts off in Job saying he was perfect and he was upright and he made sacrifice on behalf of his children just in case they would mess up. He was already rich, wealthy, all that stuff. He was doing what Yah said. And that's why he asked the devil. The devil came to him with light work. I've been going around seeking whom I may devour, but you ain't messing with Job. Have you considered that? Why ain't you messing with him? He on another level. He on some other stuff. Right? But our whole thing is somebody made me upset and somebody did this and you can't understand and you did this for generations to my people and blah blah. Well, first of all, they didn't do anything, but I get it. They have made their living, and some of them have decided to continue upon what their grandparents and their parents or even their great grandparents and others have done. Some of them have. How you doing, Christopher? Thanks for being on, Christopher Soul. Some of them have. I'm not going to deny that there's not anybody who hasn't built upon this thing. There are people who have straight up told you to. There are people who have told you that that's what they believe. So we're not going to act like that hasn't happened at all. However, here's the deal. Just because I'm saying have empathy for your enemy, which once again, empathy just means to comprehend or to feel what somebody's feeling. Have empathy for your enemy does not mean have sympathy for them, nor does it mean be a doormat. I'm empathizing with an enemy. How you doing, Tracy? Because at the end of the day, I need to know how they move. And this is what's going on. See, look, I don't need my enemy to be around anyways. I'm not asking you to empathize so that you can keep somebody around that's going to treat you like trash. May I help somebody out? Some of you who have issues with your exes, right? You have, especially those of you who have children with your exes, you're having problems because you don't try to empathize at all. Know how they move so you can already have things in place. Thank you for the love. Appreciate it. See, some of you got this twisted. Some of you need to know how your enemy moves so you'll already have things in place. You are so reactive that you have not learned how to be preactive. Yes, proactive, but I'm talking about preactive. What do you have in place before they move? What do you have in place before the enemy moves? Yeah, exactly. Know if they're going to give you that slap, right? What do you have in place before? Well, the enemy did. This is what I hear all the time. The enemy did. The enemy did. The enemy did. The enemy did. We're so reactive. We haven't been preactive yet. The enemy did. The enemy did. What do you have in place for what the enemy will do? What is the enemy's will? Just like I will bless the Lord at all times. It doesn't mean if I like blessing the Lord. It doesn't mean if I like myself. It doesn't mean if I agree with it that day. I will, as a result of my will, it will happen. Right? What is the enemy's will? You don't even care about that. You said, why having the enemy in the first place? Are you asking why have an enemy in the first place? Because I would say I'll say that's an excellent question. Because that might come from a mindset that says that everybody loves each other. But the reality is just because you might love everybody doesn't mean everybody loves you back. So it's a bad place to be when you have automatically assumed that you're supposed to love everybody the same. I would suggest to you that assuming that everybody deserves love, and look, you're supposed to love your enemies too, but I don't love everybody the same. There's things that, for example, I would not wish upon my worst enemy. It doesn't mean that my worst enemy will be treated like my child. So that in and of itself, it falls flat if that's what we're asking about. If we're saying you should never have an enemy. Watch this. There's somebody that hated me because of my hairstyle before I grew the hairstyle. There's some it's like what we talked about. If I can reverse a teaching real quick, we've had teachings before where I tried to tell people, if somebody invites me somewhere, right? Because everything I do is via donation. The way my family lives, we operate, the way the SOC moves and everything is via donation, right? So if somebody invites me to speak somewhere and they're going to ask me to come, let's say to a corporate office or something, they want me to speak to people over there. When I go to that corporate office and I go to speak to them at this corporate office, they're going to give a certain amount of money for me coming. But what's happened is that money's already been allotted before I show up, right? So they're not really paying me; they're paying they're paying for or donating to the service. They're not giving me finances because they think I'm all that. They're like, okay, what's his EIN? Can we get a tax break? Can we do this? Can we do that? Okay, he fits all these categories. Cool. Go ahead, come in here, Pastor Kofi, and give us a little something. Right? Is he able to change his message to where it doesn't sound like he's preaching at us? Because the corporate office, we have to act like nobody's belief system really matters more than the other, this and that, and all this stuff. We have to make sure all these things in accordance. But if he can hit all these things, we have something. How you doing, Shabbos? We have all these things that are set up specifically and strategically to ensure, right, that these things are always in place. Right? Like that's how they operate. Right? That's how they operate. So they're not really paying me, even though when I get in there, I can do so well that they say, okay, we'll make sure that what's allotted goes to him on a regular basis from now on. But that's not what they're doing. They're saying that they're not really paying me, they're paying for the gift. And if the gift, right, operates in what they've allotted, then what they'll say is the gift makes room. Go ahead and give him what was meant for somebody else, was meant for the enemy, or was meant for someone else, or what was meant for somebody we thought was just as qualified. We found out he's more qualified, or this time we might just need somebody different. Hey, the gift that I have is what somebody's coming for, right? It's already allotted. Well, the same thing. There's a hate that somebody has that has nothing to do with me. It just has to do with a culture or something that comes out of my culture that they disagree with. So there's somebody that automatically is looking for my there's somebody who automatically doesn't like a tunic, a hairstyle, and a skin color before I even got there. Right? So before I got there, they had already allotted this space that says that anybody that comes in this, I have given this much energy, I have this much space, this much energy in my life to hate. There's somebody that because you are too light skinned, or you are too heavy, or because you speak in a certain manner, or because you have a certain drawl, or because you have an accent, or whatever the case might be. There's somebody that says, I don't like this type of person already based off of this. They've already allotted that space in their life. So it's not has nothing to do with you. See, you have to have empathy even for your enemy. It doesn't mean that I'm going to necessarily just go with the flow and let them treat me like trash or whatever. Hear what I'm saying? When I walk into that, I walk in differently. I'm prepared for my enemy different than a lot of people are. A lot of people come in, I don't care what you think. I don't care where you came from. You're not going to disrespect. You're not going to do this. And you start going into all this stuff, and you're not changing anything. Somebody comes on the live and they say, see, that's the problem with your people. Your people don't want to do anything, change yourself. People say this stuff all the time on here, right? Your people this, your people are terrible. Guess what I'm able to say? Well, first of all, let's start with hello. How are you doing? Right? Secondly, when you say my people are a nation separate from your nation, and you should go ahead and be okay with that. Thirdly, if this is something that doesn't work for you, why don't you go somewhere? It's a whole different way of thinking. I didn't have to elevate. I didn't have to get angry. I didn't have to like try and smash anything. I didn't have to throw the phone or yell at the phone and do all this stuff that gets views for a hot second, but doesn't do anything for our diaspora. And then I can focus on what we're supposed to be talking about. Right? Because I have empathy doesn't mean that I have sympathy. Because I have empathy doesn't mean that it means that I'm gonna allow it to permeate in my life. Yeah, the Messiah didn't say. Watch this, the Messiah was a sacrifice for anyone who wants to be covered by the blood, but he also is not going to just let anybody in. You got to do something. You have to be covered by the blood. And in order to be covered by the blood, right? You see, watch this. The Messiah is also known as Aman Va'al. Aman Va'al, literally, or Emmanuel, being interpreted as Elohim within us, or Elohim with us, which is why John 1:14 says that he became flesh and dwelt amongst us. It's talking about him being Emmanuel, but also Emmanuel as another way of saying tabernacle. Tabernacle was also something that was an altar. So when you put blood on the altar, right? Not any blood can just be put on the altar. The sacrifice has to be worthy of the altar. We talked about prepare the altar yesterday. The sacrifice has to be worthy of the altar, right? Did you catch that? The sacrifice has to be worthy of the altar. How you doing, Nicola Williams? How you doing? How you doing, Z? So, so a lot of people are putting sacrifices that are not worthy of the altar. It's not clean. The word clean means to be lawful or legal. Even the word sound doctrine. Doctrine is what? Sound doctrine. Doctrine just means anything a group of people lift up. You can have Republican doctrine, Democrat doctrine. You can have hateful doctrine, loving doctrine. You can have a church doctrine. You can have Muslim doctrine. Doctrine just means anything to be lifted up, right? And sound is actually they just throw these words in here and you don't even research to see what was originally there. The word that sound there is actually, even in the Greek, is attached to a word that's hygienikos. Hygienikos is where you get this word hygienic or hygiene from. Hygiene means what? Something that's clean. They're trying to give you a Hebrew culture because it's a Hebrew person and it was originally in Hebrew when it was written. And they're trying to give you an Israelite mindset of it, the culture that's saying that this has to be clean. In other words, if it's clean or sound or hygienic doctrine, it means that it has to be lawful doctrine, which means that it has to be a sacrifice. You cannot follow this doctrine without some sacrifice. I have to be empathetic. Sacrifice. This is something that sets you apart. You were called to have love for your enemy. It doesn't mean to be a doormat, but guess what? The same person, I've had this happen before. The same person that doesn't like because of my skin color might come up to us when we're feeding people on the street. I still make sure that they go home with some food in their belly. It's a different culture. Somebody says, no, well, you don't comprehend what their ancestors did to our ancestors or whatever. See, you don't comprehend that I'm not part of their country either. I don't operate how they operate. They don't get to be. Well, you said, I wish the ignorance realized that we are parts of the same entity in cosmos. We're all one being. Well, we're all part of the same cosmos. We're not all one being. If that's your belief system, then that's your belief system. But not everybody's part of the same being. Those who have hate are those who have hate, right? But that's your belief system. That's fine. I can only speak for my culture. So if your belief is that everybody's the same, that's kind of like when people say, and this might not be your belief system, but I'm just saying another belief system that fits well with that kind of belief is, everybody's God's child. Everybody's the Most High's child. That's not true at all. It doesn't even say that. And I'm not just talking about from a physical point of view. I'm talking about spiritually speaking. Um, it tells you that everybody is not the same. How you doing, Real Rasta? Ain't doing, she travels. So it tells us that not everybody is not the same, but there is a mindset that people try to teach where everybody's the same, everybody's going through the same thing, everybody believes the same thing, everybody's gonna How you doing, Sister Iska? Until the leader sacrifices, he's a strong ox, he pulls the weight. Well, that's why our father is Olive or Alav, right? See, it's a sacrifice, but then even obedience is better than sacrifice because a lot of people sacrifice one time, two times, and then just want to talk about their sacrifice, not realizing that there's going to be obedience. How do you get people to get away from racism if you're not willing to do what it takes to get away? See, watch this. If you want to talk, because it's more, we really got to talk about 2,000 plus years of certain things that are already put in place. Technically, you got to go back 4,000, 5,000 years of some things, but we only like to focus on chattel slavery only. So if you want to focus on chattel slavery, which really is more than just 400 years old, but let's just go ahead and deal with what people try to do. It's only 400 years. Okay. If you have 400 years, why do you think that in 2 years, everything's about to disappear? That's somebody that tries to discount you. People do it on the reverse. See, we don't like it when, or some of us do not like it when we have an enemy that says, man, you know what? That happened a long time ago. It happened 50 years ago. That you're talking about something that happened 200 years ago. Who cares if that happened? A lot of people are still sitting there doing the same thing. Well, I mean, we're all parts of the same universe. We're all God's children, and that's code usually for, hey, man, if you would just deny that there was hurt, or if you would just ignore a hurtful period of time that was 400 years, that we would just get over it tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. How you doing? Love, peace, blessings. It does not work like that. How you doing? Hustle, wrestle. It does not work like that. If you've been cheating on your wife for 20 years and she finds out, I'm sorry, brother. I know you say, hey, I did it. You say you forgave me. You should get over it. It's been 6 months. No, brother. If she's going to hang in there, you're going to have to build up trust. And if you was willing to treat for 20 years, I'm not saying necessarily it should take 20 years for her to get over it, but 6 months ain't going to do it. You guys are gonna have to work out something to build up trust. Shalom, daughter of the Most High, how you doing? About a time. Right, I'm here to tell you, you got a bad mindset. She cheated for 20 years. Well, girl, you know what? You need to find yourself a new man if that's the case. He ain't just gonna get over this and that. I don't know why you trying to make it right with somebody. You at least came out and told him. There's a lot of women that went to their grave and not even said anything about it. Right? But you got to empathize. See, people lack empathy. That's the same type of mindset when somebody says, man, you went through 400 years. You know what? We let you guys get jobs. It's the same thing. That's what you sound like. We let you guys get jobs. Just get over it. You cheated. Just get over it. Now, I'm not saying somebody should just hold on to it, hold on to it. We should work towards not only forgiving, but then purifying and then working towards trust. You said once in a lifetime you realize there's nothing ever remained the same. Duality is false. Um, sure, right? That's just like saying that people can be equal. No two periods in time are exactly the same. So, yeah, right? Like equality is a myth. What you're saying as far as that duality is a myth, but oneness is not. There are certain things that there is no duality or equality. There are certain things that are universal. To be universal, uni literally means one, right? And verse means a sentence. So the universe is a single spoken sentence. So there's some things that were spoken into existence that are eternal, right? They're one. And so it's not about dual or it's not about repetitiveness or things like that, right? I would even to sort of even go further on your point. There are certain things to where they're one. But like people keep trying to find ways of trying to say why some things are different when they've been designed to be one. Thank you, Cosmos, for repeating yourself. No problem. I'll repeat myself too. There's certain things that are one. You know what I'm saying? And so, regardless, see, we say these things, but then once again, here we have the universe, right? We have a universe. The universe says that there's a single spoken sentence. Watch this. Whether you like it or not, you can say, well, no, there's no duality. But does the sun rise and fall every day? You see, I'm just saying we have to stop going over things that sound just because they're very poetic and and stop waxing so poetic that we miss. The sun rises and it falls every day. The moon might be seen in a different way every day, but it still is there every single day. And it's designed for times and seasons. Times and seasons happen every year. Yes, winter is not going to be the same exact winter every year, but there are certain things that we expect to happen during winter. There are certain things we expect during autumn and during summer and during spring. See, that's why I said we got to be cultural about it because we get to a certain point where one of the things that we lack empathy for are people's culture. That's why I'm saying I get it. Like the first person who was on who decided they were going to be anti everything was said and this and that earlier today was somebody who was doing a whole thing about, yeah, my group of people, we're the real chosen people. And this is the language where everybody came from. And I clearly was like, I can just show you that doesn't even make sense. Like we're just going to skip over Phoenicians. We're just going to act like Greeks didn't have to be taught an alphabet. We're going to act like all these Greek city states before they were considered to be Greek. Like now we just say Greek because all of them came together at some point, but they didn't consider themselves to be Greece. And that person was talking about there was no Greece until the 1800s. I'm talking about 1,000+ years before the Messiah comes. There was no such thing as Greece, right? Like we're having a weird conversation because once again, we don't want to talk. We talked about this yesterday that people want to put stuff on the altar, but altars are supposed to be unaltered. What you're supposed to sacrifice upon is supposed to be unaltered. People keep putting stuff up here and giving unaltered stuff. Right? They're giving us stuff that's been altered. And we have to get out of that. We have to get out of this thing. Right? People have been taught wrong. That's what I'm talking about, having empathy for your enemy. You said the world, for the most part, wants to gloss over us and put themselves at the center. Right. That's that Balaam doctrine. Yep. And what more is it to do for sure? How you doing? I'm sorry. I'm going to say this wrong. Is it Teshuladin? I'm not sure if I said that right at all or even got close, but thanks for being on. Right. Yeah. We had this weird and wild philosophy and mindset and thought process. We have this weird and wild mindset and thought process and philosophies that are not real. And even we're trying to escape other philosophies, not first figuring out what is their culture. How do you watch this? How do you even realize what you need to escape if you haven't been empathetic enough to realize what is encasing you? If I want to escape prison, should I not figure out the prison blueprint? If I want to escape mental imprisonment, should I not figure out the psychology and even physiological things that were done unto me to be able to attach my soul to something that's not for me? If I want to escape things that I was taught in school, do I not have to figure out why school was even created in the first place? Shalom, Sierra. Is that not true? How do I escape something and I don't know how it was built? Some of you guys have done this before. I've never had this experience before where they have those uh um rooms that you go in and you pay all this money and you're supposed to, I guess they call them escape rooms. I don't know. But you have to, or they're not safe rooms, but you pay this money and you're supposed to figure out how to get out of the rooms. And so you have to try and figure out how to escape and then go this. And sometimes they make it feel like a horror film and stuff like that. But a lot of people, just doesn't have the horror aspect. And you're just trying to figure out how to escape, right? Well, you gotta, here you are in prison or something, but you don't comprehend the culture. I probably wouldn't do very well in one of those places because I don't really know how like the movie scenes work. I don't really know how some of that operates. So unless like it's like very easy for me the first couple times, I wouldn't be able to really do what some of you guys would probably do that. Right? Because that's not something that's in my culture. I don't really watch those things. I'm not really trying to figure out those things. Besides some of the simple tropes like, hey, black people don't do this, blah, blah, in horror movies, or some of the simple tropes as far as like, they're always going to have a woman. She's going to be big breasted. She'll be running down the street. She's going to have big high heel shoes on, things like that. And she's always going to, that matter of fact, they even use the trope in Scream, not the scary movie ones that were making fun of Scream. Scream is actually an interesting thing because it actually makes fun of the tropes while being a horror movie at the same time. That's why it works for some and doesn't work for some. But it starts off with Drew Barrymore, right? Yeah, Drew Barrymore. And she goes through that scene or whatever, and she's done, really, has a really despicable and disgusting, death scene. And but all those things that are there, like I don't really do those things. It's not my culture, but I do recognize why some people like it, because I recognize that's part of somebody's culture, where you have a lot of people who do sacrifices and things, and it's weird, people like, what's her name? Is it Candace Owens? Whatever. People like her who will try to demean Native people and say, "Oh yeah, I don't care about saying bad things about them. All Native people were cannibals because of one group of people," but they don't want to tell you about. Well, didn't you guys come over on, the Mayflower and have a lot of that happen? And y'all were digging up bodies. Weren't you guys eating and drinking over people who were having surgeries? That's why today they still have it to where you can look at surgeries, but now they have the glass and stuff up because they want to keep it clean. Are you guys not the same people that don't allow the umbilical cord to come off naturally? You actually cut it off, and anybody who's cutting the umbilical cord, it's very nasty and gooey and squeezy because it's not supposed to be cut yet. It's supposed to stay attached to the woman so that the woman who can't get milk yet, who gets a little bit of colostrum at first, but might not have her milk ready to go, the baby can still get the colostrum. It used to be on the mother's breast, and at the same time have coming out of the afterbirth of the placenta that's still attached to the baby. The placenta can still do its work of making sure the baby's fed. And then once the baby's being fed, it falls off. But instead, what do? They cut the placenta. They give it to somebody else. They let them eat your placenta instead of the baby get the nutrients out of the placenta, so that the person can have some of the things that they were supposed to have that they could have by simply eating food. The movie Saw and things like that. Yeah. Right. Said claustrophobia in that situation would drive you nuts. I hear you. How you doing? Is it New Life Wellness? Thanks for being on. Right. But I'm just saying, like, there's a culture that nobody wants to talk about. Right. Why do you consider yourself to be an American? And we got to get ready to take our leave. So forgive me, I'm not going to be on too much longer because of our travel and stuff like that. I'll be back on this evening at 8 Eastern, prayerfully, if we have signal and everything together. Right. But why do you even consider yourself to be an American? You ever asked yourself that? Some of you already know the answer now, but why do you consider yourself to be an American? What makes you an American? You said, didn't they hang meat from the Christmas tree? I'm not 100% sure about that. There's probably somebody who did some of that. I mean, we know why they hung mistletoe, and we know why they had pine trees, and we know why you start seeing that turn into apples and different ornaments and things of that nature for sure. And it was about winter solstice and Saturnalia and all that having to do with sexual experiences and things like that, and being afraid of, different deities or gods, even, or even different things out of uh, a a Norse theology, things like that. How you doing, Kinte? But why do you think of yourself as an American? Question for you: Why? Why do you think that you're an American? You said you're a Jamaican that lives in America. Sure. Jamaicans used to be considered people, though, that were Americans. You said you don't. You just enough, right? You were told. Yeah, you were told. But why is it, even when somebody says African American and somebody says, "Well, I wasn't born in Africa, so I'm an American," not even realizing that some of you think that came from Africa, some of your people were native, or that a lot of you are mixed with both indigenous and African blood because they put you both in the same breeding camp. By the way, they did that with Irish people too, that stood up with you and fought with you. That's why a lot of you have Irish blood, right? And don't even realize they bred you. And the Irish wouldn't just go ahead and stop fighting with you and become poor white people. They went ahead and punished them by breeding them with you. Go look at the Isle of Montserrat. Not even realize that you have Irish brethren who went through oppression and stuff with you and still are fighting with you and for you all over the globe, and don't even want to recognize it because you're used to the Irish American. The Irish American, all right, a lot of the people who say they're Irish Americans don't want to admit that they are the people who went ahead and stopped fighting with us against oppression and became low on the totem pole and became somebody who worked for the oppressor. So when I hear a lot of and this is coming from the Irishman who lives in Ireland, who taught me. So, and the Irish woman who lives in Ireland who taught me as well. So when I listen to them and they tell me this and they confirm and they say, yeah, not only that, Kofi, it goes deeper and blah, blah. And they will tell you they don't like a lot of Irish Americans. See, I empathize with my enemies. Watch this. Some of our enemies, as we get ready to take our leave, some of our enemies that we've come up with, they're not even our enemies. They are so-called enemies or perceived enemies, but they don't like the people who don't like us either. Right? Like I'm here to tell you, there are some people who do not even like. There are Irishmen who can't stand when they hear Irish Americans start talking about pull yourself up by your own bootstrap and look, we made it and this and that, because they don't even like to compare oppressions. Even though they themselves were slaves, they will tell you all of them was straight up to a man, to a woman. They will say, no, we were indentured servants. That's it. We were just indentured servants. They don't want to admit to, because they don't even want you to think that they're trying to take your shine or something, because here we have so much fight to who had it worse and who had it worse, and who's the real slave and who's the real slave. And now white people are the oppressed ones, and black people were the oppressed. They don't even want to be in that. They will even deny part of where they come from. That's when it gets scary, because some of you, who you think your enemy is, they actually can't even reveal who they really are in your life and how much they want to help you and how much they have helped you, because they can't even tell the truth, because they're white, they are automatically your enemy. Some people don't know the difference between free dairy and Londonderry. Look it up. Don't go into Ireland, because see, there's still Englishmen, truth be told, who are still colonizing Ireland. And so if you go to North Ireland, that's not Ireland. North Ireland still belongs to the English, to the Brits, right? Ireland is where the Irish people are. And people who are in Ireland look at the Irish who are in North Ireland, and they look at them and they say, I can't believe that you would betray your own people. So there's a spot called Free Dairy, but the Englishmen call it Londonderry. Everybody else says, no, that's not Londonderry, that's Free Dairy, because we want it to be free. We don't even have that conversation, though. We don't even think to have that conversation. See where somebody's coming from, because they're just your enemy. That's all it is. They're just your enemy. Right? You have no empathy. So even some of the so-called enemies that you have. Like I tell people all the time, people will come from certain diasporas, they'll start attacking me. Oh, see, you're saying this and you're anti this and you're a reverse racist and all these different things and blah, blah. And I say, look, man, I'm probably your best. I would probably be like your biggest supporter. Like I'm probably the person that is your greatest bridge, because I'm somebody who does not think that just because you're white, you're evil, or just because you're Dominican, it means that you hate yourself automatically, or just because you're Haitian, you're poor and you're dumb, or just because like I'm the person that you probably want to listen to, or at least have conversation with, or even teach the most, because I'm gonna keep it 100. But there's a lot of people who perceive me to be their enemy. If you would have empathy enough, see, this is when people start looking like they have Dunning-Kruger effect. They're trying to clown me, but they have Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Like if you're so busy telling me what I am that you won't listen long enough to realize that I'm trying to say that if you're trying to help people, then you are my brother, you are my sister. How you doing, Deacon? If you're trying to help people, you are my brother, you are my sister. And if our nation is out of pocket, we need to check it, just like you need to check yours. That's real, right? That's very real, and people don't recognize that. Like that's with the space that I reside in. That's where I live. That's what I have subjected myself to. I have become a subject of the king. According to that, I have subjected myself to that. I've been faithful and diligent in that space. But there are people who won't empathize because I'm their enemy. Even if I'm your enemy, empathize long enough to see if the enemy of your enemy might be your friend. Hey, how you doing, D? Empathize long enough to see if the enemy of your enemy just might be your friend. It could be possible. I mean, y'all did it with Trump. Y'all couldn't stand each other. Then you said Trump was worse. Y'all got together. You got rid of Trump, or at least so you thought. And then y'all went back to hating each other. It's not as hard as you think. It's not as hard as you think. So I'm just trying to show you, learn how to empathize and even have empathy for your enemy. Empathy doesn't mean sympathy. Empathy doesn't mean we're going to become friends. Although I'll admit to you, I've had former KKK members who we became friends over time because I was empathetic. I didn't allow certain things. I wouldn't let certain things happen. I wouldn't talk to them on the phone if they crossed certain boundaries or whatever. But they wanted to try and argue me down and tell me why I was this and blah, blah, whatever. And I actually listened to them for a while, and I knew where they were coming from, and I would speak to them from where they came from. See, I comprehend that you're using Christianity, and Christianity is something that you're using, especially you're using that because I even know what you wear. What you're wearing as a KKK member that comes over from Spain. That's not something that's new. You talking about ghettos that you're trying to create over here for people who deserve death and stuff. They did that in Spain way before Adolf even knew about a ghetto. They were doing that in Spain to the Sephardic Jew. If you know who the Sephardic Jew is, then this ain't nothing new. And because I empathize, this isn't anything new. Everybody, and look, I'm not saying that we shouldn't take note and it shouldn't be a big deal of sorts to us. Hear what I'm saying? What happened to Trayvon and a hoodie? Sephardic Jews used to be on street corners in hoodies, and they would put poetry over music on street corners wearing hoodies. This is not new for them to say that you're in a hoodie or you rap and something's gonna happen. Right? You got to empathize with your enemy. You are showing signs, and I'm not saying change how you roll. I'm saying realize that when you wear that stuff, you're showing the same things that they have built up in them for thousands of years to be anti, hundreds of years bare minimum to be anti, not just 400. Hundreds of years that they have been anti this. Spanish Inquisition, first people they went up against was the Sephardic Jew. You represent something. And if you don't recognize, if you're not empathetic at all, where you comprehend what your enemy comprehends and you feel, or at least know how they feel, if you don't feel what they feel, and you at least know how they feel, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a problem. They still dress like that in Spain. Yeah, you still dress like that now. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, as far as the KKK thing, yeah, So it's like, yeah. So you have to recognize this is not a new thing. This is not a new thing. This is not a new thing. This is something that's been going on over and over again, and we keep not realizing our enemy operates in this fashion. If they operate in this fashion, let's just know that they operate in the fashion. That way we won't have to be worried about it or scared about it or thinking twice about it. We will not have to be. When you know it's coming, you're prepared. Be proactive, not reactive, right? It's easier to be proactive when you're preactive. If we know this is the way that they've operated all these years, if we know this is how they've operated for hundreds of years, if we know about Balaam doctrine and we're warned about it, if we know that they try to even watch this, not only Balaam doctrine, which is the doctrine where they pay people to be against you, right? In your own community, they'll pay the prophet to be against you. But then what about Revelation chapter 2, verse 15? The next verse right after 14, Revelation 2:15 tells you be concerned about Nicolaitan doctrine. Guess what that word breaks down to? Nicholas actually means conqueror. You're supposed to be more than conqueror. So Nicholas, but where do they conquer you? Then what is a layperson? What is a layperson? A layperson is somebody who's in church services, are they not? You go to your church service, then they have the people who are in the pews. The people are in the pews, right? Unless you got a certain title, you're pretty much considered to be what? The lay people. You come there every Sunday for somebody to give you a conquering doctrine that you would be conquered, and you would simply be there. And I forget who I was talking to recently, but somebody was literally, we were having this conversation where oh well, I won't say who the person is, but we were having a conversation, nothing bad about them, just they told me about this, where they were just coming out of churches, and the churches were telling them, one of the reasons they couldn't be there anymore, and they were teaching about Tanakh and all this stuff, or Torah and all this, and they couldn't stay anymore, especially when the leadership changed, because the person who got in the new leadership there was saying, we need you to make everything simple, because the more simple it is, the easier it is to make sure that the people are in line. And that just shows that these people don't have the courage or the heart or the capacity to be able to teach at a high level. But a lot of people are not out here trying to make sure that things are going to be better, right? They're trying to keep it as simple as possible, because the more simple it is, the less that you guys are going to buck or ask questions or do anything. And so rather than be held to a higher standard, they say, let's make the bar so low, right? Y'all breaking your back to go to services because you're trying to limbo in every Sunday. Right? That's the goal for a lot of people, is let's set the bar so low. Let's make the standard so low, right? Even in our camps, let's make the bar real low. Look, brother, just be strong, yell, and point to a couple of scriptures really nicely. And you don't have to treat women with respect at all. Let's set the bar real low. It's going to be 7-1 anyways. Let's set the bar real low. Hey, you know what? These sisters tricked their husband into having more than one husband, or one wife. And even though he never wanted more than one wife, he only wanted one. He was willing to work 7 years and work another 7 years for it. We're just going to say that's an excuse for you to set the bar real low. You hear what I'm saying? I don't question what God says to the prophet. Set the bar real low. That's where a lot of people are. But I'm look, my back is fine and everything. My balance is fine, but I'm not really trying to limbo. I'm trying to walk upright. So don't set the bar low, right? Matter of fact, set the bar high and have it to where I got to start working on upper body strength so I can do some pull-ups. I need that bar to be high. And I'm trying to reach towards heights. I'm not trying to figure out how to keep going lower and lower and lower and lower. That being said, thank you all. I got to get ready to take my leave. I appreciate you all for being on. Thank you for joining us on the podcast, on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok. Thank you so much. We got to get ready to go from here. Do one last look at the land before we start really getting into some business conversations. Keep us in prayer about that. We have stuff that's been being updated on the website somewhat regularly again. So please feel free to be able to look that stuff up on the website. As the stuff keeps moving. We had to move our meeting from last Saturday, our SOC meeting overall, to this Saturday. So we will do everything in our power to make sure it'll be at 12:30 p.m. Eastern New York time. So look for a Google Calendar invite on that. If not, as we get closer, if you don't receive one, just let us know. We'll make sure that we get you the link. I will be off tomorrow, but Minister Tam will be on YouTube tomorrow to give us a word. Praise Yah, and then for the rising, and then she'll also be on her platform tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, and then we'll see some of you 7 a.m. Eastern New York time for Thursday Rising Prayer. We'll see the rest of you again live 8 p.m. Eastern New York time. I'm sorry, 8 a.m. Eastern New York time on Thursday. So in case I don't see you this evening, early Shabbat Shalom to you, according to our calendar. And we appreciate you. You guys take care of yourselves, continue to push forward, grow. And we honor you guys. Thank you so much. You said you found that. Okay, we could look into that. I don't have any information on it, but we could possibly look into it. Also, North Carolina might be. We'd have to figure out what's going on as far as growth, land, all that stuff, or whatever. But hey, that might work as well in case this falls through or whatever. So if you have information, then you can text, email us, or whatever about it. Plus, we never even had really follow up conversation or did we even have our initial conversation, Sister Iska? I'm not even sure, but we can look into that, add it on there, and see if we can, say, present that to those who are part of the committee, and then not only that, those who are part of those who've been giving it for that particular reason for a while, and see if that's something we can use as a backup. But we thank you all for being on. We appreciate you. Continue to pray for Sister Toya and her family. Continue to pray for Sister Kimberly and her family. Continue to pray for Sister Austral and her family. Continue to pray for Minister Bertram and his family as we continue to move forward together. But we thank you all. We appreciate you, and we honor you. And we hope to hear from you guys again this evening. Thank you again. I'm going to go ahead and get a tiny bit of rest and then get ready to get back on the road. But thank you again. We appreciate you, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. We're going to get ready to do our shout out. If you've never done a shout out with us on TikTok before, it's pretty simple. We'll explain it in a second. But to everybody, thank you again so much for being on. It's our great privilege and honor to spend time with you. We know you could have chosen to do many different things. We know that you guys are very busy. You guys are very blessed. And you guys have a lot of different things that you do every day. And so we do not take it lightly that you would spend a little bit of time with us. So thank you again for being on with us. As always, it's been Pastor Kofi. I'm sorry, excuse me. Take time out to check my wife out, the Honorable Maya, on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A and D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Thank you to the moderators again, the serial staff, SOC, and Live Dottie, and everybody. Even if you disagree with us, we still appreciate you. Just keep seeking truth. That being said, MITs, I'm going to try to reach out to you, even if briefly this week. Remember that we're going to be meeting again this Saturday to continue. We're back to 5 p.m. Eastern New York time. We did 6 p.m. to start. We're back to 5 p.m. Eastern New York time this Saturday coming up. I will reach out to you guys before we hit that date. So if you can make a little bit of time for me, I'd appreciate it. And I'll check in with you to see what that time is you can make for me. If we don't reach some of you today on our normal days that we would normally talk today, especially when trying to look at this land, is going to be very compact. So I might send a text message or something just to kind of let you know, and we might move things around. But I will try to, if I can, call you briefly here or there. Depending on where we'll be at the time on the land, I might not even have signal. So if for some reason you reach out to me, or I normally would reach out to you today, and I just don't get in touch with you, just realize it's due to signal issues, okay? More than likely. Or just try to make sure that I'm present when I'm looking at the land, okay? So please don't take any offense to it, but we hope to talk to you guys later today. And if I don't talk to you on phone for some reason today, realize that we will contact you ASAP, or, hold me accountable. Hey, Pastor Kofi, we're supposed to meet up. You need to send me a text, and we'll make sure that we do what we need to do. All right. Appreciate you guys, family. If you're on TikTok, stick around for a hot second, or if you want to go over to TikTok, we're about to do our shout out. However, to everybody, thank you for being on. As always, this has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken, until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shabbat shalom, family. Peace. To everybody else who's on with us, if you're still with us on TikTok, this is how our shout out works. If you've never done a shout out with us before, it's pretty simple. Music is